Coachella Valley, have been for 42 years. No fees, as other programs that do charge, we do not. So we're a nonprofit versus the profit outfits that are operating in the area. Also, the biggest item that we offer, no, that's okay. Our callers or the informants remain anonymous. We're the only group statewide, nationwide, that can say that. Any other group that's operating, their callers do not remain anonymous. They can be hauled into court to testify, but with CrimeStoppers, you remain anonymous. Truthfully, we don't even know who half the people are that are calling, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But that's our two highlights. And how does CrimeStopper work? It's pretty simple. Been very successful. Again, we've been around for 42 years, solved a lot of crimes here in the Coachella Valley. Actually worked on one for Desert Hot Springs a year ago, hit and run fatality that probably would have gone on a lot longer till we got the call and supplied it to you. Actually, one of our board members works with your COP department and was able to bring it forward, and I believe the police department was very happy with our information. It led to quite a conclusion. So we're here. It's pretty simple. I think there's a little brochure in front of you this evening. There it is. We're pretty well known around the valley. 341 stop. We get a lot of phone calls on that number. The witness calls, gives us information. We have a checklist that we go down. It takes 4 or 5 minutes for these people to give us their information. We don't ask who they are. We don't want a phone number, an address. We don't want to know who they are at all. We get the information, and then at the end we give the caller an ID. Either we ask, do you have a favorite number, secret number, or some word that makes you feel good. I don't know, grandma. So we'll say, okay, grandma, that's your code name from here on. And we have your information. We'll forward this on to the police department. If there's an action in Indio that we get, we send it right away the minute it comes into the Indio PD, along with every other police department in the Coachella Valley. Everybody's aware that there's something going on in Indio or a nearby town, and we're amazed when sometimes an investigator from Palm Springs gets the notice that there's something going on in Indio, and part of the information was, for say, it's a white Toyota with a black stripe and a Nevada plate in Indio. And now the Palm Springs guy realizes, wait a minute, that's the same car that I've been looking after up here in Palm Springs. So the two detectives get together, and somehow or another the crime does get solved a little quicker. So all the agencies, including the Sheriff's Department, is aware of something going on. So, when there's something going on in Desert Hot Springs, and we do answer to that, the other police departments know what's going on in Desert Hot Springs. So it's a pretty simple deal. We give the caller that ID and ask them to call back in a couple of weeks. Some of these things, we're not a 911. We're not an emergency outfit, but we acquire information and forward it on to the local PD. So we advise the caller to call back in a couple of weeks, and or call after the second Thursday of the month, because that's when the board meets, and we decide what the rewards will be for the arrests that have come in the previous month. So we do make arrangements. It's a cash reward. Sometimes you'll see me at the corner Walgreens in the magazine department with my red jacket on, and someone will come up next to me and say, I'm Grandma. And, oh, okay, Grandma, here's your money. And that's how it is. And we have no idea who these people are. Again, it's CrimeStoppers, it's anonymous. The fun ones are always when this little voice back here says, my mom says she's grandma. So, okay, give this to grandma. And I look the other way and out they run. And that's how Crime Stoppers works. It's very effective. People aren't afraid to come forward if they can remain anonymous. These other programs, you're not anonymous, and our feeling is it kind of slows down the flow of information versus the anonymous. And that's why I'm actually here tonight, just to ask you to maybe buddy up with us. I see your website says you're involved with another program, and that's, I got to say, that's costing the city money to be involved with another program. And the main thing is, too, the callers do not remain anonymous. So I think that's part of with the uptick in crime, we want to get as many of these calls and clear as much of this crime up as we can. So we're just asking that Desert Hot Springs maybe takes the time through partnering up, or again, we service the area, but maybe on a press release, here, police investigate shooting in parking structure. Please call the department if you have any information, and it sure would be nice if at the end you said, or call Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous. That's all we're asking for. I'm not even asking for money. That's a pretty good deal, huh? So we've got plenty. So anyway, we're just asking that maybe the use of Crime Stoppers could be a little bit more in Desert Hot Springs. And I think it would probably, we're not going to stop crime, but we're sure going to slow it down if we can get the cooperation and the use of the anonymous phone number. I think it'll go a long ways. So that's all I have. And if there was a question in the interest of time,
Thank you very much. We've got a few
that.
minutes. Questions?
Okay.
I'll start down here. Any questions?
And, take a look at the brochure. You can always get a hold of me, call the secret number, and they'll find me. And we're not police. We're just mild-mannered citizens, retired insurance agent. They'll track me down, and I can get back to whoever has a question. Or if it's a matter of meeting with somebody later, even the police chief or whatever, to go over our program and see how we can fit in a little bit better, that's fine too. I'm at your disposal.
Great. Questions on this side?
That's exactly what I was going to recommend. If we can get you with staff and
Sure.
the police chief and see what we can do. I think your services would be greatly appreciated here in Desert Hot Springs.
Yeah, it will. And again, it's just that, it always bothers us when there's a fee involved and we don't have a fee.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, thank you.
Down here, anyone?
Very interesting presentation. Thanks. One of the
Well,
more
making
interesting
it
ones
short
that's
and
come
sweet.
along. Oh, that's
Yeah.
very good. Council's a lot going on. We aren't necessarily aware of this, that we didn't have that statement on our press releases. Is that something we need to bring back to the council?
I think we'll start with the staff level and see if they can work something out. And if it has to be a policy by us, they would definitely bring it back.
They take care of so much for us. So I wasn't aware that we had another organization doing this. I always thought it was Crime Stoppers. That's who I've seen on KSQ and the other
There you go.
NBC.
Yeah. See, we are around the valley. We've been here. We're well known. And again, I think it's when they call the other number and find out they're not anonymous, it kind of stops the flow of information. So we just want to leave that information highway
We'll get you.
open.
We're going to run out of time here real quick, but we'll definitely get you with our staff. Do you have any more questions?
No, I just want to say that if there's any contention on that, bring it back to the
Yeah,
council as an
absolutely.
agenda item. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So our next presentation is going to be on Southern California Gas and their work here in our community. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something I'm really excited to show because one of the biggest complaints, if not the biggest complaint that we get from citizens, is trash and dumping in the desert. It's been an aggravating point for all of us, myself included. And about a year ago, was headed out to Indian, and SoCalGas has a pumping station out there that tends to be a place people hide behind and dump trash. And because I serve on the Coachella Valley Conservation Commission and on the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy, and because Deborah McGarry, who is in the audience, we'll bring up shortly, is with SoCalGas, I said, let's get everybody together and see if we can pull something up to fix this. So Gerald, would you show these slides real quick? Up off of Big Morongo Canyon Road, off of Indian, up there in the corner, the little star will show up here, hopefully. Oh, there we go. And you may have seen it driving out of town. Here are some before pictures with the amount of trash that was out there. And that's just a tiny sample. This is behind it. People had started fires. So SoCalGas, we reached out to them. We got the agencies together, and they came up with the plan of regrading the road and putting the boulders out there. And surprise, surprise, SoCalGas decided to pay for it out of their pocket. So here's some great aerial shots of what they've done, how much cleaner it is, and how that is really working to keep. And I was just out there today, no trash. So I think this is a good example of a public-private partnership about a company that's stepping up and doing something they didn't need to necessarily do, and working together with various agencies to pull this off. So I wanted to bring this to the council and to the citizens and say thank you to SoCalGas. So I'll let the mayor take it from here and bring Deborah up. And okay, both of you then. And this was a lot of work on a lot of agencies, particularly SoCalGas, and I know I can't say thank you enough, and I'm sure the residents and the rest of the council feel the same way. So, Deborah, thank you. So,
and I'll say a few words after.
Yeah, tell us how it all came together.
And again, it's one of those projects, it wasn't exactly in our city limits, but a lot of people don't know boundaries, and we represent a lot of our northern area north of the freeway because of where our city lies, and a lot of other cities don't. So Gary's been a really big proponent on making sure that our deserts stay clean and that these trails be recognized. And without partnerships like Southern California Gas Company, you can't get them done all the time. So this is something that he reached out. You were generous enough to do it. We wanted to say thank you. It's not a lot, but it is a little bit on the behalf of the City Council. We hereby honor you in a grateful recognition and appreciation for your efforts in implementing improvements to prevent illegal dumping. And as you guys know, most of you do in the State Desert Hot Springs, we're doing everything we can, from our police department to our community development department and partners like this, to stop dumping in our deserts. It's whether you're a hiker or not, you see it, and it's disgusting. And we might even use some Crime Stoppers there to see what we can do to stop this. But we wanted to say thank you for your efforts and what you guys did for us. So thank you,
Mayor. So appreciate it. Do you want me to go on that side or this side?
This
Okay.
side, the presentations, we're talking to the people, so.
Great. I'd love to talk to you. So again, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City staff, my name is Deborah McGarry. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Southern California Gas Company. This is my colleague, Estefania Sanchez, and she was the project manager for this project. And we also had a couple other folks that are not able to be here tonight. We had Ken Velasquez, who is our field operations manager for the department, who helped to put together the actual idea. And then also Stephen Hilario, he was our construction manager at the time, and also our lands advisor, because we had to work with the property owners to make a decision to move this forward, and his name was Carlos Pena. And there was lots of other folks that were also involved as well. So this, to me, was a project that ties directly to our motto, which always says, glad to be of service. We've been in business for over 150 years. We're a long-time utility here in Southern California. We serve from Visalia down to the Mexican border, from the Arizona coast to the actual coast of California. And for us, we really do take in consideration the environment. I remember when I got the phone call from Gary, and Gary had said that, Deborah, he says, we've got all this illegal dumping over here. He says, you guys need to work on cleaning it up. And I'm like, well, let me go by and take a look. And this is during COVID. So I drove by, and as I'm driving by, literally, I found someone illegally dumping at the time when I drove by. So I turned over the information to our corporate security, who actually works with your first responders here in the city and throughout the communities. And from there, we tried to come up with an idea that would actually work. So this idea was proposed. We then worked with the Conservancy, with the city, and of course, our project manager, Estefania, was the one that actually kind of helped to lead this and move this forward. We had several meetings internally, and you saw the end result. So again, this kind of ties to what we feel about the environment and how we continue to partner with our communities and our cities, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this. Again, it's all part of our motto, glad to be of service. So thank you very much. I was going to ask Stephanie if she wanted to say a few words. And just only because she was the project manager, and I remember her calling me and just lots of questions.
Okay, so I'm not mentally prepared for this right now, but so just a few words. I volunteered for the Indian Canyon project. I rose my hand when they were kind of splitting up all the projects. I was new to the team, so I was like, I'll take it. Little did I know that it was going to become something bigger, you know, and now I'm sitting here at City Council talking to people about the desert. And it's pretty cool for me because I'm a geographer, and my background's in geography and as well as anthropology. So I actually care about these types of issues as well, not just because of my job, but because of my background. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take a picture.
Thank you, Mr. Gary,
Stand back here.
Russ, Roger, and Jan. Thank you so much.
Stand right here. Council stand behind us or sit behind us or however they feel comfortable. Gary gets a little short right there. We're going to recess until 6 o'clock.
Hello, can you hear me? Test, test.
Everybody's quiet, but we still have 2 minutes.
2-minute warning, do we need a buzzer?
Tricia, keep talking. Talk away. Keep the crowd going. Come on.
2-minute warning, 2-minute warning. I thought at 2 minutes we got a timeout. That's too fast.
Yeah, I know. I've never had a clock in council chambers in 15 years I've been here. It's almost worked. It's getting closer. Remember the one?
At least they remembered to change it during the time change.
Yeah, the one in the other chambers used to be so slow.
Yeah, at least during the time change it changed.
I think they just put a digital clock tied to the internet.
Well, I'm glad they got a bigger one because now I can actually
Yeah,
see
that
it.
first one we were.
All right, we'll get our city clerk back in his place there. And are we all good? Recording, good to go? Thumbs up. All right. We will call the meeting to order for the City of Desert Hot Springs, and this is the regular meeting of the City Council, and the City Council serving as a successor agency to the former Redevelopment Agency Board for Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. This is our 6 p.m. regular session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts,
Present?
Councilmember Nunez,
Present.
Councilmember Pai,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner,
Present.
and Mayor Manis.
Present.
Thank you.
Our invocation tonight is going to be by Reverend Matthew Dudley of the Spring Church. And then our Pledge of Allegiance, if Councilmember Pai would lead us. Please. I'm sorry, you can turn the mic around. Sorry, I forgot to turn it around. It's my fault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, distinguished council members, and members of our city. On behalf of the city and people, thank you for what you do. We appreciate you all. So why don't we take a moment and pray. Father, thank you that tonight we get to have this beautiful place that we call home, Desert Hot Springs. Thank you for the amazing people that live here and for the leaders that have been elected and put in place here. I pray, Lord, that tonight there would be wisdom and justice in all of these seats, that you would use these members of our city here as implements of your will and grace in this place. We give all thanks and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Will you please stand and say this with enthusiasm? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I heard some enthusiasm there. Way to start it off. All right, City Attorney, Madam City Attorney, would you report on closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have no reportable action.
All right, thank you for that lengthy report. And we'll go to the approval of the agenda at this time. Does anyone on the council want to pull any items from the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, if not necessarily pull, but we can rearrange it a little bit. I think there might be some residents here for item number 4. We can hear that first for them, if they're here for that.
We'll ask the audience, and I'll move things up if necessary, absolutely. No items to be pulled from the consent calendar. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to make any comments on the consent calendar?
No, but just to note for the record that we did receive a letter from Brad Anderson concerning consent calendar.
Okay. And that was emailed to all the council. Anyone in the audience have any comments on the consent calendar? I don't see anybody coming forward. I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I do have a second, maybe. And please vote.
My vote should not be against, it should be for.
Gerald, please announce the.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to public comments. Do we have any public comments on Zoom?
We do. We have Walker Beverly, followed by a phone number 760-324-9637.
First, we'll do Walker Beverly. Mr. Beverly, when you get up on the screen, you'll need to unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes when you begin speaking.
No comments at the time, just listening in on a meeting today.
Thank you very much. We have a phone number 760-324-9637. Your hand is raised. You'll have to unmute yourself. You are unmuted. Can you identify yourself, please?
You bet. Hi, my name is Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Rancho Mirage, and I think I got skipped over again. I wanted to speak on consent item number 10, but I did submit a letter, and hopefully that's been placed into the record. I am opposed to that, and that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your letter was noted. You weren't skipped over. We didn't have you identified on your phone. Apologize for that. We are back in person, so please feel free to join us. Anyone else on Zoom?
Betsy Sanchez Briones.
Betsy, there you go. Did you have comments for City Council?
I don't have any comments at this time, but I just want to say this is my first city council meeting. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. All right, I do have two in-person, I'm sorry, was that it on Zoom? I do have two in-person comments. I'll start with Ms. Shea. COVID must be coming to an end because you are now joining us. Been a long time.
Good afternoon. I saw 3 minutes and I was like, oh my God, I got to go, talk fast.
Better go.
The veterinarian clinic, I was getting inquiries from the people at the senior center, and they want to know what's going on. Just shout it out sometime in the near future. Let people know what's going on besides those people living over there. Okay. Bus service down Mountain View. Nothing's ever progressed there. What I understood from talking to Sunline right now was that there's no sidewalks, and that's why they don't want to do it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but we have 8,000 people living down Mountain View, and it's minimal how many are down Long Canyon. Yes, I think we should go over to Desert Edge and all that kind of stuff. I really believe we should. I put in a petition years ago to Sunline about that. But Mountain View is very, very important too. I was also approached by people at the senior center about Cactus and Hacienda. Evidently, there was a big accident there, which I didn't even know about. But I said I would bring it up. They said, why don't you have them put a stop sign? And I'm like, yeah, well, there's stop signs coming in from the side street, but there's nothing going down Hacienda. So if you can look into that, I'd appreciate it. And the main reason I came today was because 5 accidents have occurred on Mountain View. Okay, one involved 2 buses a number of years ago. Another one involved a pregnant lady. Okay, and then I came to the chief of police and said, with some neighbors, they asked me to come with them and to address this problem. And it changed for a little while, but they're doing 70, 80 miles an hour down Mountain View, which is 35 miles an hour. And a man was killed down that street just 10 days ago, 2 weeks. And if we could do anything to put a stop sign at Mountain View and Via Domingo or right around there, or speed bumps or something, but it has to stop. It really does, before somebody else gets injured or killed or something. And I want to thank you all for all the wonderful stuff you're doing in the city as far as improvements. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I see working signs all over the place as they, traipse around. And just need a couple stop signs. And that's not too expensive, is it? But please, think about it. Amen.
Thank you very much, Judy. Juliana Dawson. If you are here to public speak on items not on the agenda, this is my last blue card. Please fill one out and give it to the city clerk.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and City Council and Desert Hot Springs leaders. I'm Julie Dawson. I'm currently the exalted ruler at the Desert Hot Springs Elks Lodge, and we just celebrated our 40th anniversary of when we received our charter. So we're real proud of that, and over the 40 years, we've donated over $500,000 to the city residents in one form or another. And so I'm here to announce our 27th annual charity golf tournament, which will be held on Saturday, April 30th at Mission Lakes Country Club. This money helps us to make donations to local youth teams, such as Little League, soccer, junior golf, football, and the junior ROTC, activities that have been so missed for these past 2 years. We also host 15 to 20 Marines or Navy personnel that come down from 29 Palms, and we give them a fun day of golf at no expense through our sponsorships. We've utilized other funds this past year to donate to Food Now, to provide school supplies and backpacks to students from Desert Hot Springs, and to purchase items for our veteran centers. I'm asking for the city's sponsorship in this year's effort, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you've done for the community.
And I have applications if anyone would like to play golf.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for everything done for the community. I have no other blue cards here. Anybody in the audience like to speak on public comments not related to any agenda item? I see nobody coming forth. We'll close public comments this time. We'll go to City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have 3 updates from our Finance, Public Works, and Executive Program Director. Let's start with the Finance Director.
Good evening. Financial highlights. As of March 14th, 2022, our fiscal year 21-22 revenues are over $16.4 million, which is at 52% of the amended budget. Last year at this time, our revenues were at $13.9 million at 54%, and 2 years ago, the revenues were at $12.8 million at 56%. For expenditures, current expenditures are over $16.6 million at 53% of the budget, amended budget. Last year at this time, expenditures were $15.4 million at 57% of the budget, and 2 years ago, the expenditures were $14.8 million at 61% of the budget.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And Nick Haker.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we had some vandalism done to a couple elements of the city. The entryway lights, the timer, and the antenna were broken. I'm happy to report that they have been repaired. The missing lights that were stolen or vandalized are going to be replaced as soon as we receive them. And then the Mission Springs Park restrooms have been repaired. We added in new steel doors that have been welded, and they were painted today. The men's bathroom, the steel doors are connected to the block wall, and the women's restroom has the stalls and the doors all metal and welded. So hopefully this keeps the vandalism down. They also been painted black, so if they are tagged, we could just paint them black. So hopefully this works. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. And finally, our Executive Program Director.
Thank you. I wanted to invite all of you and members of the community to the Little League opening day ceremonies next Saturday, March 26th at 10 a.m. So this season we have 35 teams and 434 kids enrolled in Little League. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. That concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, Council, speak that. We'll start with Mr. Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly in answer to the question on Sunline and Mountain View, and Judy, we've had many conversations on that one. I'm the rep for the Sunline Transit Agency Board for the city, and there's a lot of moving parts in a bus route, and moving a route isn't simple. For everybody that's happy with the new route, there's going to be somebody that's unhappy that the old route was missing. And so I didn't heard it was with sidewalks. So maybe if you would like to take a trip down to Sunline with me, be happy to do that, and we can go down there and look into that issue. I came aware, we've all heard about the problems in other cities, or so I thought, of shoplifters, organized shoplifter going in and taking carts of stuff out, just walking in very brazen, clearing the shelf and walking out. And to my chagrin, I found out that we've had a few instances of that happening here in our city. I received a letter from a local resident, and he sent this in right after. He's the one who actually made me aware of it when I was out looking, found out that, wow, indeed that's going on. So, he shops at Vaughn, Stater Brothers, Walgreens, grocery outlet, different places, and he says he sees the shoplifting going on, and that he's even had employees tell him about these organized shoplifters coming in. It's a big problem. I don't know what exactly we do about it, but I think just raising the salience, it's like everything that's going on in California. We're not immune from it, and my hope is that we can figure out something, and we got the chief over there. He's as aware of this as anybody, and I'm sure he's working on it. But, huh? You haven't seen it in town? Okay. So, okay, we'll leave it at that. But who knows what's going on with with this type of activity, but there's shoplifting going on. So, all right, I'll check with you next time before I bring a report forward, okay? Attended Southern California Association of Governments Transportation Committee meeting up at Los Angeles. We got some significant grant opportunities going on there. I've relayed that information to staff, and I hope we're going to pursue those. It's a tremendous opportunity to bring in money right now. The money seems to be flowing. Let's grab it. I took a tour of the city of Coachella. Mayor Stephen Hernandez and I were talking. He said, well, come on down, take a look at what we're doing. And super impressed. I mean, they have it going on down there. And I think if we can, maybe somehow organize some type of a trip down there to take a look at what's going on. I hadn't been there in quite a few years. And wow, what a transformation. So I'd like to see, maybe get to be on the regular schedule. We go visit other cities and, they can come here and see what we're doing. Great. We're doing good stuff too. But it was just very eye-opening, and so I encourage everybody, if you can go get Stephen Hernandez's tour of the city, go do it. It's very enlightening. Attended a meeting here in this room for public input on the district maps, and as I've been watching these districting meetings going on in different venues like Desert Water Agency, Mission Springs Water District, it's pretty dry stuff. I haven't seen many people show up except the people that were involved in city government or the agency government. Very little public participation. We had a pretty good showing. It must have been 20 people show up, a combination of Zoom and otherwise. And there were some complaints that the city hadn't done enough to reach out. But I think staff's done a good job of reaching out. If we've had way more than anybody else I've seen in the other districting. So, and I guess we're taking that up on the agenda tonight. We have another public hearing on that. So, traveled to Riverside for the Airport Land Use Commission. Nothing to report there. I took a tour of our Desert Hot Springs Recreation with our Executive Program Director, Roberta Cernick, leading the tour, and that was very good. Really appreciate that. Thanks, and I think everybody go take a look and see what a wonderful thing we have going on there. There's always a waiting list for people, and I was told, well, it's only a matter of hiring another person to double the number of kids that can participate in this program or something thereabouts. And without Roberta, getting too frenzied on, hey, Russ, you're doubling my workload. But I really think the council needs to take up as a budget item. If we can serve more kids by just hiring one position, we really need to get that done. There's a lot of people that, it's just an absolutely fantastic program, and we need to make sure that as many kids that want to participate in that can within our ability to budget it. And I think we have the ability to budget it. Daylight savings time, well, who likes that? So we'll skip that one. I just wish we would just decide as a city that we're not going to go along with it anymore. And, everybody laughs, but I'll tell you.
I'll be to work late every day then.
We'd be on time in the city, huh? Just tell you, you could write excuses for everybody, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, okay. Attended the league division meeting, and that was interesting. Had different people running for different elected offices. Maybe Gary, when you get to your comments, if there was anything interesting that came up out of that one. It's a long meeting, but get to that. We have understand in June, we have an automatic cannabis tax increase coming along on the CPI. something that was written into the ordinance when it was passed, that every year that it would go up according to the CPI. I would like to see that come back to council for either a yay or a nay, even though it's not required. I think it's with the environment that's going on right now, and everybody else, other cities saying, hey, we got to take a look at this, maybe it's being taxed too much. And then I've had quite a few people, it's odd that how many people have asked about joining Citizens on Patrol. When you all of a sudden you get the same question come in 3 or 4 times. So I understand we are accepting applications for Citizens on Patrol. Is there something we could do to get that on the main website page, either as a blurb or get something out there to see if we can, people are saying, well, do we have it? Was their first question, and it's, how do I join? And they said, well, go to the city website, and it wasn't there. So if we could get something along those lines, that would be great. And finally, we had a graffiti problem in this town, and we decided we didn't want graffiti anymore, and so we solved that with a really good graffiti program. And we had a problem with shopping carts all over town, and even though we've had to shore that up recently, we basically solved that problem. And when there was dumping in vacant lots, we had residents calling us constantly and saying, dang it, can we please get these sofas and old refrigerators out of this lot? And then after we put that program in place, those same people called us and said, wow, isn't that nice? I can't believe it. That's great. There's no more dumping in this lot next to me. Thank you. We're regularly picking it up. So we know how to solve these problems. And now I would like to put in front of the council another one. The one issue that we have now is the smaller stuff. Desert Valley Disposal goes by and picks up the big stuff. That's easy. But we've had to do various cleanup committees and everything else. I think we could just process a duplication, same thing we've been doing before. Let's find some independent contractors in town that we can point to. Hi, there's a pile of junk on that lot. Everybody's complaining about it. It's not going to cost a lot of money. I think we could probably budget something for that. Nothing like what we're spending on the large debris, but I think we could probably find the money and say, you know what, we're not going to have, the old, it's trash. It's not really a refrigerator. It's much smaller than that, like cups and old glasses or whatever you want. So if my fellow council members here on the dais, if we could get that, maybe there's somebody willing to join me in bringing that forward as an agenda item for consideration by the council at a future meeting, I think we could probably put that one together pretty quickly. So if somebody here want to join me on moving that one forward?
Before we go any further, Russ, you and I already have a cleanup committee that we work together on. So why don't we try to plan this together rather than you trying to go around the committee?
Well, I wasn't trying to go around. I'm sorry.
It seems like you're offending the committee members by trying to do something
Well,
that they're.
I'm going to tell you,
they're
Scott,
tasked
you and
to
I are
do.
working really good on that committee, and that wasn't my intent.
Okay.
I'm just bringing an idea, and if that's the way to do that, I think that's great. What you're telling me is we already got it in place to solve this one, so let's do it.
Great.
And I'll go along with that one, and Mr. Mayor, that wraps up my comments. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Few things to report on. I'm really happy to report that the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy that I serve on awarded the City of Desert Hot Springs a $128,000 grant to the city for developing our trails conservation outreach and education program. One more thing for Roberta to work on. So, and I know she'll do a great job with that. Right now, this will start with 4 events per year, which students from DHS Rec Center will be educated on outdoor hiking and other activities, taking on some adventures, exposing our kids here to our wonderful desert and our trails, as well as hiking safety and conservation. So that's kind of exciting. I attended and was honored to introduce Chief Henson and Deputy Chief Shaw at the Diversity DHS Town Hall Police Forum on the 5th. Forum was very well attended here in City Hall. Chief Henson and Deputy Chief Shaw, as well as Community Service Officer Bailey, were all there to answer resident questions and give an update on crime stats in our new dispatch center. And I want to thank them for taking the time and a weekend to meet with this group. It demonstrates what a responsive and community-engaged police department we have. So thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief. I attended the Women's Club Lunch and Fashion Show. No, I was not a model this year. We didn't do that, but Miss Pie was. And my partner Eric and I were the model escorts, which was a lot of fun, helping the ladies as they got on and off the runway modeling the fashions. Women's Club is a really amazing organization raising scholarship money for our kids here in DHS, and it's one of the oldest community organizations in the city. So Thanks to Ms. Pye for the invite on that. Happy to also stand in for the mayor at the Spa City Palateers Luncheon last week. I explained that Mayor Pro Tem means stand-in. So, you know, somebody feels like pushing the mayor off the edge of something, I guess I stand in for that. So, he sent his apologies, and it's another stalwart group of residents. And we have some amazing community organizations here in the city, and one of the reasons DHS is such a great place to live. Coachella Valley Mosquito Vector Control District gave a presentation to our Rotary Club this past week, talking about mosquito prevention. And I wanted to note that they specifically called out and cited our Public Works Department, Mr. Hegger, as the example of what other cities should be doing when it comes to working with the district on mosquito abatement. That was something, they specifically brought that up. And they point to their relationship with our Public Works Department when they're talking with other cities. So it's always great to hear compliments about our city staff from outside organizations, and I wanted to let the rest of the council and residents know that our Public Works staff, Nick and Danny and their team, are highly regarded by the Mosquito Control District. Lastly, wanted to congratulate Deputy City Manager Doria Wilms and my colleague again, Councilmember Pye. They had a very complimentary profile on Outstanding Valley Women in honor of Women's History Month on NBC Palm Springs. And if you didn't see it, it ran during the week, but I did post it on my social media accounts and you can watch it. These two ladies are among the many outstanding people in this city that make it so special and a well-deserved honor, so congratulations to both of you. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nunez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few things I just wanted to go over. I just wanted to say, let the residents know we're having a free health clinic at the Indio Fairgrounds March 25th, 26th, and 27th. That will take care of your dental, vision, and medical needs, free of service, no proof of insurance, employment history, residency, immigration status, or ID. So just come on down if you feel the need to get a checkup, and those who can't do that here locally. I wanted to see, so this is the issue that we're having with the Zoom. So I wanted to see if staff can look at it and try to get it fixed, because last week when I tried to log on, I had to make a comment rather than be a participant. So I'm pretty sure there's residents on here now that want to be participants and don't want to communicate, don't want to speak. So there should be an access button for just to participate rather than speaking. So maybe we can take a look at that. We had a Park and Recs Committee meeting. On that agenda, majority of the meeting, we talked about public safety and how do we, we're asking for all these parks, but the issue is how do we keep these parks safe? So I'm hoping that we can team up with the Public Safety Committee meeting, Parks and Recs Committee, Council, and staff to see what we can come up with, if we can look at other cities, see what they're doing to keep the residents and kids safe on the parks. That align, I want to thank Nick. Nick, I've been asking for a long time for those restrooms. I really do appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure the residents would too. I'm hoping I can get by next meeting, if we can get an update on all the upgrades that we're doing in parks, that would be great for the residents to see. We can give them an update. I know they're asking for when reseeding is going to be, what's the schedule like, so we can get an update of all the capital improvements we're doing in the parks. I greatly appreciate it. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pye.
Okay, I'm a member of the Palm Springs Airport Commission, and there's a subcommittee, and it's Operation, Properties, and Facility Committee. And we're discussing parking capacity, valet service, revisited, budget claim capacity, and this will all be presented to the Airport Commission as a whole to figure out how we're going to do that better. The Riverside County Housing Public Leadership Academy was attended yesterday by Juan Carrillo, principal planner, and he was also the keynote speaker, or one of them, during this session. And also Eric Berselli, Communication Development Director / building official, also discussed several things, and that was the cost of living, patterns of segregation, inequality allocation of public resources, community opposition, proliferation of real estate investment vehicles, and increasing share of jobs in low-wage industry. And we will continue discussing this. You were going to say something? Continue discussing this in 2 more weeks. And also today, the DHS Women's Club interviewed scholarship participants at the Desert Hot Springs High School. And I'm a liaison to the MSWD liaisons, and on tomorrow at 3 p.m., they will be discussing a public hearing on March 21st regarding water district redistricting in 2022. And the last thing I want to talk about is there at the district meeting, there was a woman there that was afraid to talk to anyone because she was the only one that looked like her. And she felt that she was going to be reprimanded or not respected by the others in the group. After that was over, I walked up to her and told her, don't do that again. And I repeated it several times, and she asked me, what did she mean? And I told her, anytime she comes into this department, into this building, all of us, staff and the city council, are her public servants, and she's never to walk in here again like that. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. I don't have a lot to report on. Unfortunately, I had a lot of work and family commitments, which didn't allow me to attend all these meetings, but I wanted to say that up front. It's not that I didn't want to attend, that I just couldn't. The districting meeting, which we'll be talking more about that in the item itself, I wasn't able to attend. Long-time Little League coach, and it's very important to my youngest daughter, who is playing Little League probably for the next couple of years, last few years, or before she gets to high school, and so I wanted to be there for her. My oldest daughter, not that I'm bragging, but I'm going to brag, has been accepted to ASU, and because of COVID, there was certain days that you could go as parents, and so I also missed another meeting because we were out in Arizona for a day. Gary, Mayor Pro Tem stepped in for me. Thank you very much for the Women's Club, not the Women's Club, the Spa Palletiers, and that was because I actually was attending something as a mayor, Riverside County Transportation Commission. But so there was a lot of events that just fell on other things, so I apologize. But it is Little League season again, as Roberta said. Please come to opening day. I will apologize up front. I won't be at opening day. I have the one Saturday I work, and Roberta would have never known this, is for my real job is I have to be there for meetings. So unfortunately I won't be there, but my wife will be there, my kids will be there, our staff will be there, our community will be there, it'll be represented by our council, and please come out for that day. It's really heartwarming to see those kids, and especially all 400 of them out on the field. And they usually do I'm hoping they're still going to do the parade where they parade the kids around and everybody gets high fives, and it's just a really warm feeling to see, and it's a really good community event. With that said, somebody brought to my attention a while back, and I wanted to bring this forward and really say it in my comments. There's a lot of things in our community, not a lot, but there are a few things in our community that are named after people, and that's for a reason. And I encourage you to ask why it's named after that person and learn to realize who that person was, rather than, I don't know who this person is, no one knows anymore, and let's just get rid of it and name it something else. And that happened, I'm not going to say where and who and when and why, but that's because certain new people came to our community and they just didn't know, and there was a very strong individual running an organization and they wanted to change the name of something. After I had time to explain them and bring the family on who the family was for that person and why it was named that way, they were very appreciative and understood it a lot more. So I just encourage our community that there's a lot of rich history here. There really is. And just for example, we pushed as a city council 15 years ago when I was elected to encourage Palm Springs Unified School District to name Cabot Yerxa Elementary after Cabot Yerxa, one of the founders of our community, and the reasons why, and the rich history that's there. And a lot of people don't realize that Julius Corsini School was named after a mayor of Desert Hot Springs who passed away. And so these are people that have done a lot for our community in the past and might not be relevant today, but they were at one point, and they were part of Desert Hot Springs history. So please ask those questions, and that's important moving forward. I had a lot of community I did have a lot of community meetings off to the side, but they're not really pertaining to Desert Hot Springs. I did attend Riverside County Transportation Commission, but nothing that really directly pertained to Desert Hot Springs, so I'm not going to bore you with those details. That's all I have to report today. We're going to move into public hearings. I am going to move the agenda around as requested a little bit for items that I think people are here for. I'm going to bypass item number 3 in public hearings and open item number 4 in public hearings. This is development agreement number 20-4, a development agreement between the City of Desert Hot Springs and JHW Land Investments, LLC, for the future development of their residences at Ovation project, previously known as Marabella Village project. And our staff report is going to be by Patricia.
Yes. Thank you.
I almost said Eric, says Eric on there, you know, but I didn't want him to be, well, he will highlight.
Make sure this is on. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The residence at Ovation, previously known as Marbella Villa, is a residential condominium project consisting of 402 units. Shown here is already approved site plan. In the development agreement, the city and the developer agreed to the following. The developer will pay all applicable development impact fees. Developer will also pay all applicable permit processing fees. They will also pay for and construct 15th Avenue from Palm Drive to an estimated 2,000 feet west along the entire frontage of the project. This is a public benefit. The street improvements include a full-width street section to both sides of the street in compliance with all city and state standards. This is also a public benefit. The term of the development agreement is 20 years, subject to an extension and early termination provisions described in the DA. The developer will have the vested right to develop the project pursuant to the rules, regulations, policies governing the use, density, intensity, design, improvements, construction, building, and occupancy standards. Shown here is a project site showing the full-width street improvements on 15th Avenue, also known as Camino Campanero. Shown here is a conceptual of the project with the full street improvements. On October 13th, 2020, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the underlying entitlements and approved the mitigated negative declaration addendum development permit number 05-17, conditional use permit number 09-18, and tentative track map number 37597 for the development of 402 residential condominiums and a community building located on APNs 656-030-005 through 008, located on the west side of Palm Drive, north of 15th Avenue. So no further environmental review is required with this development agreement. Further, on May 4th, 2021, the City Council held a public hearing and ultimately approved the resolution to uphold Planning Commission's decision to approve the project. And with that, this is a consideration for City Council to approve the development agreement and approve the first reading and read by title only an ordinance of the City of Desert Hot Springs approving the development agreement by and between the City of Desert Hot Springs, JHW Land Investments, LLC, related to the future development of residents at Ovation project, previously known as Marbella Villa project, a residential condominium project located on the west side of Palm Drive, north of 15th Avenue, APNs 656-030-005, 006, 007, and 008. That concludes my report. I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I open it up to questions for staff from the city council and before I open the public hearing, I want to remind everybody, as I know this item was a little contentious when it first came to the city council. Today we are here to discuss the agreement in front of us. This isn't to revisit the project in general. The project in general has been approved by the city council already. So I will give a little leeway if you can tie it into this agreement, but I'm not going to give a lot. So I want it to be focused on this agreement only. With that said, also I did want to make an announcement that the property behind the Sky Haven and the Marabella project has been purchased, and the developer has agreed to finish the road on West Drive. I know that is some of the contention that has been talked about being leading to this agreement, and I wanted to make that announcement so that we could use that in our decision making. With that said, we'll entertain questions of staff from the city council. I'll start on this side. I apologize to the public. We don't have a system where we can raise our hand on a dais like we used to. So it's me reaching back and forth and just kind of picking people to do it. So I just want to make that clear. I know we've come back from COVID here and people see me going back and forth, but we don't have a system like that anymore. So I'm going to start with Ms. Pye and I'll work my way back. No questions for staff? Mr. Nunez? Mr. Gardner?
I don't know if it's appropriate for Patricia, but you had mentioned that they did buy the 2 parcels behind there in the agreement at the point when we had the discussion was they were going to consider pushing West Drive through. That isn't part of this agreement. Does it need to be added to that?
They are not the ones that are purchased. That a different developer has pushed.
Okay. All right,
So
thank you. That's all I
You
have.
couldn't condition this development on that. It was a discussion during the initial discussion to have West Drive if this developer decided to develop that, and that would have come in agreement, but they did not purchase that. Mr. Betts?
Yeah, could we get a picture of the slide up of the street improvements, the 2,000 feet?
Our city clerk's working on it. Just give it a second.
There we go. So as roads are built in the city and projects are promised down the road, we have streets that end up looking like this. And if you travel down that road and get to the end of it, it's nothing that's easy to turn around on. This is a simple 2-lane road. It's not a 4-lane road. So somebody's going to get down to the end of that cul-de-sac, and either they use the dirt and make a makeshift cul-de-sac. I'm wondering why there isn't a provision here to put in a turnaround at the end of that road, even if it's temporary. It's not going to be too much to accomplish for this project, and even if the road does one day finally go through, well, then you just abandon that cul-de-sac, but there needs to be some provision for that. Does staff given any consideration to requiring that to be a cul-de-sac? I mean, maybe this is just a simple plan and doesn't show that. What's the plan for that?
So the actual street plans would go before the engineering department, and so all of that would be vetted at that point. So if council wanted to see a cul-de-sac at the end of that, that's something that you guys can direct staff to make sure that we are having our engineering department review once they get to the street plans.
Okay, so as we're considering this development agreement, I think that might be something that we would want to consider, but I'll save my comments for later. It's just a question, so as I'm working towards my comments on that. The development agreement references Schedule A, which is a start schedule, but I didn't see it in the packet. And I understand you've now delivered that to us. Is that what this is that's on, is that what this is?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so handed to us at this meeting was Schedule A, which I guess is a scheduling of phases A through H. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So they're going to build some of the buildings 1 through 6 first. And this looks like a schedule of starting on 6/1/23 and concluding on 2/1/26, 2/15/26.
So the start date for Building 1 is actually December 1st of this year.
Okay, where do I see that? Am I missing something?
The
And that's
second to
the
last
completion
column.
date. Okay, so they're planning to actually start construction?
That is correct.
Okay, now you mentioned a 20-year development agreement. Does that mean they can wait? I mean, which comes first, this or the 20-year development agreement?
They would, because the exhibit's part of the development agreement, they would actually need to comply with the exhibit. The development agreement term is that of 20 years, but because this is actually a part of the exhibit, of the development agreement, they would need to comply with the exhibit.
Okay, so asking that question earlier in the day and producing this solves that problem that we now actually have a construction schedule. Good. I want to thank staff for getting me a copy of the original conditions of approval. That answered some questions that I had earlier. I've got some questions regarding the intersection. Mr. Mayor, how far do you want me to go on the questions here versus
This is time
presentation?
for questions for staff on the agreement in front of you. So if you have questions for staff, this is perfect time.
Okay, so I've got it. There's a question that's come up regarding a wall that's going to be a significant impairment to people as they exit 15th onto Palm. Gerald, do you happen to have that video available? We got a 20-minute video, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you'll...
I know you're joking.
Okay, so this is, before you start it, this is if you were driving out 15th Avenue down the street and heading to Palm, and now you're going to try and pull out into traffic and figure out which way to go, either right or whichever. I guess if you're going to have a signal, which there will be there, I presume. But if you're going to turn right, this is showing you what you're going to face. So if we could go ahead and roll that video.
And it's named 15th Avenue, but it's also Camino Campesino.
Yeah.
Great.
So there you are pulling out, and now you're going to look left because you want to turn right. And don't worry, it's turning right now. And we have a problem. So there you go. You could stop it there, Gerald. Oh, wait a minute, a little further. Stop it now. So that's how far out the front of your car is going to be before you can actually get a sight line. There's a problem with that wall. My question is, for staff, is that wall going to stay there? Is the wall going to be removed? And if the wall is going to be removed, who's going to pay for it?
So that property is a different property. Obviously, this is separate property. It's my understanding that that wall is actually encroaching onto the right-of-way. And so therefore, it would be an illegal encroachment, most probably, again, I'd have to look into it a little bit, but by that property owner. So therefore, it's that property owner who owns the wall who would have to pull back that wall. So if it is a code enforcement matter, the city could possibly, it would depend, but the city could possibly go ahead and remove that wall and lien the property to recover its costs. But it's my understanding that that wall is improperly encroaching onto right-of-way.
Okay, and so that answer to me says that the city is going to go after that property owner through its normal enforcement mechanisms. Is every time we go after a property owner to enforce something like that, it goes quick and easy, we never end up in court?
Yeah. No, of course.
Okay, so to me, that's such a significant hazard that I don't think we can allow that to go on forever. If they're going to start, I mean, even as soon as you start to have construction trucks coming out onto there, you're going to need to do something to deal with that one. So I'm just bringing it to your attention that that's what I found when I looked at that property. Gerald, could you put up the slides that deal with that, the road? Do you know which ones I'm talking about? Aerial 1. Okay, so this is a view of the project, and it's showing the road, and my question's coming up, Mr. Mayor. So what we're saying is that somebody back behind there bought some property, correct?
They bought that whole piece right there behind it, yes.
Okay, but do we know who bought that?
I do.
And who is it?
I wouldn't want to say at this point. It has nothing to do with the agreement. I was just assured by the owner that that was being purchased and he'd be processing paperwork soon the city council will see, and that they would be required to finish that roadway.
Okay, sorry. So eventually, when somebody comes along to develop a road, they will, once they come through the whole process, just like this one has, they're going to be required to do a road. But we don't know when that will be. They could buy it and hold on to that for 20 years. We don't have any guarantee on that. So relative to this project, my question is, how do you envision the circulation's gonna go? Gerald, could you go to the next slide in this series? And if you look down the bottom right, there's a very busy intersection of Palm Drive and Two Bunch Palms Trail, which I think everybody knows is super busy. And until this project gets built, everybody's gonna leave. No, don't put that one up yet. Sorry. Everybody's gonna leave here, go take a left onto Palm Drive, go down to Two Bunch Palms, if they're going over the school, by the way. Take a left and get down to the Two Bunch Palms Elementary, or wherever they're going in the morning, up to the high school. There's going to be a lot of traffic going through that intersection. You're going to probably have 1,400 cars, at least half of them leaving for school in the morning. It's a lot of traffic dumping onto there. And my guess, as happens here in the city, is that people are going to find another way to get there. If you look at Two Bunch Palms Elementary, they're running, and even up at the high school, they're running down the dirt roads, kicking up all kinds of manner of dust. So if this person that bought those lots never comes along and builds, and these people want to find another way to get to school, put in that road, Gerald, magic. There you go. Unless that's paved, as you see there, they're going to be traveling a dusty, dirty road, which the prevailing winds are usually coming from the west, which means everybody at Sky's Haven is going to get inundated with dust. Everybody at Agua Dulce is going to get inundated with dust on a windy day. And so my question to staff is, do you have anything to mitigate that if you're not going to require this developer to pave that? Have you considered anything to mitigate that dusty situation? For example, could we require that road to be paved, but with a reimbursement agreement as we have done in other situations? Is that legal to do, City Attorney? And have you staff recommending that?
That is legal to do.
And then as far as the question as to whether or not staff has considered this, so actually the city manager and I today went back and actually listened to the motion that came forward the last time this item came before the city council, just for clarification, and this item was discussed. One, council could absolutely ask the developer to do the full paving of the street, so that's number one. But when this item was brought up last time, the motion actually included some direction to staff that we, as staff, bring an item back in 6 to 12 months to the city council to actually address that exact question that Councilmember Betts is talking about, which is ingress and egress for that whole area, separate and aside from what the developer's been conditioned to do and what's been presented before you guys tonight as the full width of the development agreement.
Okay, and typically the developer would be required to do a half street just from that one little 2,000-foot section, not the added one. And then through this development agreement, we've negotiated that they will actually work that out in the last motion on the May 4th. And by the way, that date's coming up in 2 months, 6 months to a year, so we're running out of time here. But through the negotiations of the development agreement, we got them to agree to do the full width of the street, which is obviously necessary because of all the traffic that's going on there. But I think it would be, as you've just acknowledged, thanks for answering that question, that as part of our considerations tonight, we could require, if we determined that there was such a traffic hazard, we could require that section. It doesn't actually go as far as that's showing here. If you look right where you see the word elementary school, or even beyond, that's already paved. So you're looking at just a portion of that to get done. We could, in your opinion, City Attorney and everybody else, condition not only just the full width street in front of the project, but also going a little further. And so that's what I heard said. So the only point here on all this is, make it a little bit salient here, is that there's a huge issue. Either we're going to have to mitigate for travel down this dirt road, which exists, or the city's going to have to go and do some paving and get a reimbursement agreement for everybody comes along later on. But I don't think is anybody saying it's acceptable that they have all these 1,400 cars traveling down a dusty, dirty road and kicking up all that dust? Is that the plan?
Assuming that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Well, I'm trying to keep it a question, so
I
you
know,
don't.
I just.
All right, we'll take the
it's
rhetorical
unfair
question
to
and
ask
move
a
on.
question like that,
We'll take
so.
the question and move on. And then the last slide, since I made it, I might as well go ahead and use it. Gerald, can you put this up? Oh, there's that wall again. That's pretty creative, little graphic work there, if you ask me. Next one. Okay, so this is the intersection that's there now, and I understand from the staff report and the conditions of approval, they're going to be required to put in signaling, and I just want to make sure, so I understand this next slide, it includes that signal, right? And that signal will say Palm Drive on it, just like is pictured there. In blue, yeah. Well, the one I picked out was green, so we'd change that. Dang it, I missed something. Okay, and that will be a no U-turn? And I'm getting a little bit down into the weeds, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you are.
Appreciate that, thank you. You know, I worked hard on those pictures.
You did.
All right, so the only other questions I might have, and it was previously established that the developer will remove the balconies, because, and I'm just repeating that now because there's been quite a bit of concern from Skies Haven, and that was in the motion, the balconies that look down over into people's yard, and that ACs will be down on the ground. I'm just repeating for the benefit. We've got a lot of people
I
watching
understand,
this.
you're stretching it now.
Okay, and so
It's about the agreement, not about the project.
And so, and I think that,
You'll have another chance.
yeah,
after
thanks.
this.
I think that answers most of the questions that I had for staff. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
And I'm going to make a few comments. I'm not going to ask any questions directly to staff. No, I'm going to hold my comments off to the public hearing. Then I'll make my comments. I'm going to open the public hearing again. If you're here to speak on this item, if you're on Zoom or if you're in person, you'll be speaking to the agreement that's before us, not the project itself. The project itself has been approved. I will ask anyone on Zoom, are they here to speak on this item?
Yes, Agustin Ariola.
Augustine, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, Mary Martha. Sorry, are you still on item 4? I wanted to comment on item 3.
Okay, item 3, we'll be coming back to that item. Anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak to this item?
No, we only have the applicant.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this item? I see nobody coming forth. This will be the final opportunity for anybody to speak on this item in public hearing, in the open public hearing. I will close the public hearing at this time, and I'll go back to the council. Since we had nobody for or against the item, the applicant does not need to do any rebuttal. But I will open it up to the applicant. Does the applicant have any final comments before I finally close the public hearing? I apologize, I didn't give the applicant a chance. I don't hear anybody coming in from the applicant.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I will close the public hearing at this time, and I will open it back up for city council discussion. I'm going to make a few comments, and this is my opinion as a council member representing our city. This isn't to debate what's been said, because there's a lot of valid points to these roads being built in our community, and I do agree with Mr. Betts on some of this. The reason I wouldn't condition this project this time to build those roads is that we have public safety issues in our community. We have dumping. We have people doing bad things. I live in the north end of the city, and my street that you get to my development, which is gated, has a cul-de-sac in it, and we find people doing things they shouldn't be doing in that community, all in that area all the time. So I really caution, first of all, in making a cul-de-sac. The entrance of the project will be the turnaround. There should be enough space in this area to turn around for anyone that accidentally goes down that road. I would encourage dead-end signs or no outlet signs, or however you word it these days to be politically correct, put on that road, and I would blockade that road at the end. I helped develop a church here in the community as part of the board of the church, which was outside the city limits, and the county tried to force us into making the full roadway, which would have been, we were only developing 2 of the 10 acres, which would have taken the road into a road to nowhere. And we argued the same point, and this was almost 12 years ago. And we won that with the county transportation after making them aware of some of the issues you have. And if you feel free to ask the police chief, I think he's here. I think once it's fully developed with the new developer and this development is completely built out over the next few years, and then the development behind it starts. And I do have good word as of today talking to that individual that they're planning to process pretty quickly and start development within the year. Then I would say that road needs to be developed and the access into that school is really warranted at that time. And you'll have a lot of traveling and there won't be as many public safety issues. But I truly believe, and this isn't really to start a debate or be opposite of anybody, I think that's the biggest issue right now, is making sure. I'm very thrilled that we're going to make it the full road, not a half road. I have full faith in our staff that they'll come up and make sure that that intersection is safe. I appreciate the work that Mr. Betts did to visualize what it'll look like there. And that wall is a hindrance, and it was a hindrance when we put in those sidewalks. Anyone's been on the council long enough will remember that project. That developer is not very easily to deal with, and we chose at that time not to go into a fight and just build the sidewalk to the bare minimums. But at this point, we will need to go into that fight and make sure that that intersection is safe and that that block wall is removed or relocated for visual issues. Besides that, I think this agreement is well written. I wanted to thank our staff. I know there was an item that was missed by accident in the back packet. Those things happen, and unfortunately we're all human, so those things do happen. But for the most part, I trust our staff has done a great job, negotiated what we asked them to, and going back and listening, I think we've accomplished what we needed to at this point. But I would be not in support of building that road completely at this point, but I would be in support as soon as development starts to get that road built so that traffic could have ingress and egress access as quick as possible. Those are my comments. I'll start back down with Ms. Pye and move my way back down.
I'm ready to make a motion.
We'll entertain a motion, and then we can do a second, then we can go back into discussion, because I know there's more discussion to be had.
Okay, I make the motion that we do staff's recommendation A, B, and C.
Second.
And there is a second. We'll go back into discussion. Mr. Nunez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, let me say thank you, Mr. Betts. I think that was a well visualized map that you can see. I mean, I think that in the future we can get maybe a map like that shows more than just the project itself, and maybe a radius of 2 miles, whatnot. Be grateful. Thank you. I don't know. Back in May, when I made it very clear and that the only way I can see this project moving forward for me was getting west developed, not all the way up to west or the west side. I think I made it very, very clear that our residents are going to be utilizing Palm, which is going to be really, really congested. I envision kids that come from this development going to be walking to the school in the desert. I thought the motion back in May was to see if we can get something going to get west all the way to the school. So if I would have known, I would have voted no back in May. I just don't know how we can approve this and not think about the residents using that, and especially little kids. That is a K through 5th grade. It's just asinine that we're looking at this in a totally different sense. I see 1,200 residents there, living there, occupying every day, coming in and out. Traffic is already on Palm is crazy, and having to maneuver around that is just going to add to the problems. If our first responders at any point had to tell these residents, 1,200 residents of this project to evacuate immediately, what does that look like? What does that look like for the residents to having one way in, one way out? And if you think picking up dirt and picking up dust is a problem, that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to ask the council to reconsider this, to look at this, if we have to maybe pull that portion of traffic and revisit that so we can have a deeper conversation, because even with the timeline alone, we can't guarantee that property owner on the west side is really going to be in time to develop at the same time as this project. I mean, we can guarantee that, I'll move forward. I can approve that. But without certainty, without, I guess, guaranteeing that this is not going to be done, I can't do that. I can't move forward with that. That's it, Mr. Mayor. And sorry, one more thing. The mobile home park, we wouldn't have to go to the owner of that park, we'd have to go to the state, correct? Because the state owns the mobile home parks. So dealing with that is going to be tied up in a mess, correct, also?
So we would go to the owner of that mobile home park, and there may be some collaboration with HCD that we would do in conjunction, specifically if we ran into a barrier where they were unwilling, but we would first address it directly with the owner of the park.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, the Skyhaven Park is an HOA. They own their own land. It is run by a board of directors, and the state oversees mobile home parks, but they do not own it.
But that's not Skyhaven, right? That's the.
You just asked about that, didn't you?
That's the Skyhaven.
Yeah.
No, that's not Skyhaven.
No, he asked about Skyhaven.
No, I think he was talking about the wall.
Correct.
That wall is not Skyhaven, Skyhaven.
Okay. I don't know how it wouldn't be, but
That's this other mobile home park.
It's a different one.
which mobile home park are you speaking about?
Who
You
put
said-
that slide
I
up?
believe it's Palm Drive Court
Oh, you're
Trailer
talking about the
Park.
park that was, you're talking about the wall that was going to be an I?
Yes.
God, okay, that's Palm Drive Court, that's not Skyhaven. So the owner of that, yes, we would need to do that. I'm sorry, you said Skyhaven, so I was,
Well, other than that, Mr. Mayor, I mean.
I didn't want
any-
Skyhaven residents to get upset and say, no, we own our place. And I was in there.
Any collaboration, any discussion I would have with the council to look at this, I'd be more than happy to
You've
entertain.
made your opinion, you made your point, and we appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was impressed by the graphics, Mr. Betts. You did a great job on that, and it caused me to think a couple of things too. But I was happy to hear from staff and the mayor as well. I share your concerns with both West Drive and the dead end out there, but it sounds to me that we have time to work on those two pieces, and the lot behind that is owned by the other purchaser would be the one responsible for doing west. And you look at the timeline that they're on the build out on this thing, you're not likely to have residents move in much before the third quarter of 2023. So there is plenty of opportunity when that other developer brings its piece forward, I think, to address the concerns of connecting Camino Campanero and West and addressing the dust issue and the turnaround issue. So looking at the development agreement in front of us, I'm happy with it. I think we should move forward, but I would want staff to really focus on those two issues, the issues raised by Mr. Betts and Mr. Nunez, the kids going to school to and from, and making sure that we get West and Camino Campanero connected sooner rather than later. And it looks like we have the opportunity to do this, so I don't want to hang this up by doing this, so I'll be voting in favor of this. And I would hope my other council members would, because we do need the density and the housing that this is bringing forward to meet our arena numbers that you so graciously were able to get lowered for us too, Mr. Betts. So I think this addresses a lot of concern. And while, yes, we share those concerns that you raised, I think we have time to address those without hanging up this development agreement. That's all I've got.
Mr. Betts?
I want to point out that this is the time when we work these details out. We don't have time later. Whatever we decide here is what it is. It's what it's going to be. As they say in China, gaijishima joshishima. What it is what it is, and what it is decided right now. And so the question is, we're looking at 42 residential buildings. 25 of those buildings are going to be 2 stories with 8 units each, and 17 of those buildings are going to be 3 stories each, 402 condominiums, and 1,500 people, 1,400 people living there, and traffic count of incredible amount of cars, and creating a big, big traffic mess. And I'm really dismayed that something as simple as a cul-de-sac on a project this big, which is nothing for somebody to put in at the time they're paving this street. You tell the contractor, pave it so it's easy to turn around. We're going to end up with, we've seen it so many times, the 3 posts, the posts with the 3 wood rails, the reflectors, dead end, somebody pulls up, and great, now what do I do? Well, they're gonna turn off into the dirt, and it's gonna look like a mess. This is a big project. You're not asking much of this developer to put in a simple cul-de-sac. So I would hope that this motion could be amended to at least include a cul-de-sac for easy turnaround on the street, if you're not going to do what is the right thing, is to mitigate this problem. I think the motion, I would like to see in the motion, since we've brought this point up and got staff agreement and city attorney agreement, the motion will codify, since there is a conflict that we specifically enumerate in the motion, that the development schedule A will be the determiner on the development schedule, that it's not 20 years from now, that this thing just sits there and with the entitlement to sit, with the ability to sit there doing nothing for 20 years. I'm told by staff, and I hope the record's clear if we go back and review the meeting, that that's part of now this motion, or isn't a part of the motion. Do you want this document included in the motion? I think it needs to be included in the motion.
Well, let's answer that question before you move on.
It needs to be formally
Madam-
entered into the record.
Okay, I'm asking your question for you.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Breathe for a second. We'll get an answer for you. Madam City Attorney, I know this was alluded to in the agreement, but it was just left out by accident. Is it part of the recommendation from staff?
It is part of the recommendation from staff, and it is part of the contract.
So it does not need to be added?
Pardon me?
It would not need to be added to the motion then?
Correct, it does not need to be added to the motion. This exhibit was unintentionally omitted from the contract before you. It was supposed to be in there. It's to be part of the contract.
So this would be, so in essence, then what's happening is, since we are agreeing with staff recommendation, this is part of staff recommendation.
Already in the current motion, yes.
Okay, good. I'll go with that one.
Thank you.
May I
And,
please
No,
provide, it's a very important caveat to this schedule that I think people need to be aware of. There is some print at the bottom that does state that these dates are arbitrary, with grading anticipated to start in July of 2022. So to hold the developer to these specific dates, I just need everybody's understanding as far as expectations are concerned that this is their anticipated construction schedule, and that based on their grading plans, based on availability of supplies and such, that these dates may in fact change. So I
Okay,
just
so-
want, from an expectation standpoint, that that's put out there.
So I think we have that understanding on most agreements that generally, we've had developments that for one reason or another have become
We had a recession that
whatever.
caused all kinds of developments
And
to
I
go
got
wacky.
it, but it's a big difference between starting on 12/1/22 with grading, and I presume it's not just grading that they're going to start, it's construction, and a normal construction schedule, and that's a far cry from 20 years from now, okay? So
You've made your point.
I got the fine point. I just want to make sure that you're not saying that this is just nothing. Okay. And then the other thing is, I think the motion needs to be that the developer will be required to pave from the project to the end of existing paving on West Drive with a reimbursement agreement, or city staff will do, the city, us, at our expense, and with a future reimbursement agreement from whoever else is going to do that, will provide paved, dust-free access for 1,400 people who are going to be using that road, whether you like it or not, or that you're going to do some way to completely and totally block that off so that they aren't running down a dirt road. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the question and the comments about, creating access down there for dumping and stuff by the road. I think that's what you meant, is we put this road in, it's going to make it easier for it to dump. They're already dumping there. It's a dirt road. They don't have any problem running down a dirt road to dump. We've already got that problem there. I think the paved road's probably going to make it easier. It's a point we could differ on this one, but I think the paved road's probably going to make it easier to figure out who's dumping there and stop it. That's a debatable point.
Absolutely.
But I just want it to be on the record that by not requiring that access down that way and not doing something to mitigate it and just totally ignoring that, you're creating a mess. You're going to own it when that messes get created. You can mark my words right here, right now. I'm saying it for everybody to hear it, and I'm not trying to be mean or nasty or anything. Mark my words. It's going to be a huge traffic mess, and you're not doing anything to mitigate it. And we certainly have the means and the legal means to do that, and we should be doing that. This is a huge project. It's not something you're asking out of the ordinary. You look at what happened down in Beaumont when they put in all those developments, the Best Buy and all that stuff. It's a huge traffic nightmare. And Beaumont just said, hey, go ahead, put all this stuff in, great, no problem, we love it. They created a huge traffic mess. They got a problem now and forever. And everybody knows that you go to Best Buy, good luck trying to get out of there to get back to the freeway. And the people that live in those housing developments there have a big mess all the time. And so anyhow, I really think we were remiss. I mean, I'm just totally dismayed that I can't even get a simple little cul-de-sac included in this motion. I would really hope that somebody would, the maker of the motion and the second would at least give me that much.
I'm going to make my final comments and then we'll go to the vote. First of all, I don't think anyone sitting up here is asinine. I think we all have our own personal opinions, and I'm sure that word was used by accident. I think we all have our passions and why we want that road to be built. Second of all, I appreciate the debate and I appreciate the comments. I have a difference of opinion, and the opinion is that we pave the road, they will use it to dump. We don't pave the road, they will use it to dump. But if we have construction going on and we block the road correctly, they won't dump. They'll go somewhere else. They'll probably dump somewhere else in our city, unfortunately, because people don't listen correctly on. They can put their stuff next to their driveway and get it picked up for free. Go figure. Look, I don't think there's any argument up here that that road shouldn't be built. The argument is when it should be built. I have no problem with this project moving forward. It looks like it's going to take 3 years to build. There's no way 1,400 people are showing up tomorrow to live in there. We'll probably not see anyone living in there for over a year, so we have some time. By then, if the other project isn't up, then 2 council members get together, bring it back, and let's spend some city funds and get it built, and then we'll get reimbursed when the former project gets put out there. I don't care. We'll bring it back at that point. But again, you're leaving open desert area for people to travel through and dump their trash and do things they shouldn't be doing. And in this day of age, we've got to be able to capture our public safety needs. Everyone knows that I started as a volunteer fireman in the community. I have a very big passion for our public safety, and that's usually what I put forth as public safety. I'm also very pro-development, and I think developers do put a lot into our community, and I don't think anyone's being asinine or not listening to the concerns up here. We just have a difference of opinion. That's it. So I appreciate the motion that's been made. I appreciate the second. I appreciate the comments against why we should build the roads. I don't think anyone up here is saying we shouldn't build the roads. It's just when should we build the roads is the question. And so at this point, unless there's further comment, we'll be taking a vote.
I got one more quick comment. And I just wanted, I think it was saying it would be asinine. I didn't take that as anybody was calling any of us
we were all
asinine.
called asinine up here. So
No,
we're
no,
not, you didn't.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but I got a different interpretation. I said it would
Sure.
be
We'll check
asinine
the
to
minutes
do
later.
that. And whether if something is asinine makes the people agree to be asinine, I don't know. The other thing is I want to ask my fellow council member, Gary Gardner, who I'm sure is concerned about beauty of our city, and if, as this person who made the second, I guess the maker of the motion isn't going to go along with it. I was hoping she would, but I was hoping that you would see fit to include the cul-de-sac at the end of that intersection, just to make it look clean, because that's gonna be a mess also as people turn around and go off the pavement. And if you would just go along with that, at least we get something here. Gary, are you concerned enough about the beauty of our city to at least ask the developer to do something as simple as create a temporary cul-de-sac that can be easily removed later when the road's finished?
Mr. Betts, you know I am as concerned about beauty as anybody up here, and I work very hard working sure that our trash gets cleaned up. It was my idea to do the $10,000 fine for illegal dumping. I'm out there doing that every day. This development agreement isn't the place to do that. As we heard from staff, when it comes to engineering, they will discuss that with the developer, and I am confident that the staff will make a strong position to do that, and I would not be at all surprised if the developer did that without us having to put it in the motion. This, in my mind, is not the place to do that.
Well, I would disagree with you that this very much is the place to do that. That's what we're doing. This is a development agreement, and this is where we look at what things that we require of them, just as in this development agreement, instead of doing a half street in front of the project, they're doing the full street with curbs, gutters, and sidewalks on both sides. That's correct, I hope. I covered that with staff earlier. So this is the time to put in those type of things. Mr. Mayor, I won't belabor it anymore. It looks like this
Thank you
vote's
very
going
much.
that way.
All right. At this point, please vote.
Motion passes with Councilmember Betts and Councilmember Nunez opposed.
I'm going to go back to item number 3. I did not realize we had a public speaker on that, and we do have one on Zoom. This is our annual housing element progress report for the 5th cycle. Eric, second.
Agustin Ariola.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you. My name is Agustin Arriola. I'm the Senior Implementation Manager at Live to Rise, and I just wanted to take a brief moment to go ahead and comment on your annual housing element progress report. With the close of your housing element 5th cycle and the beginning of the housing element 6th cycle, we wanted to strongly recommend that you direct staff to submit the pro-housing designation application to the California Department of Housing and Community Development. HCD recommends that jurisdictions apply for the pro-housing designation at the same time as their housing element update for the 6th cycle is submitted. Live to Rise and its housing regional partners have been thinking about bold and creative ways to increase the supply of affordable housing in the region. So by adopting a resolution to authorize your city staff to submit an application, you would be clearly declaring your commitment to meet the housing needs of all of your constituents. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I wanted to give the staff report first, but we've got the public hearing open, so that's open at this point. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? All right, I'm going to go back to the staff report. Eric?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and respected council. Today I'm bringing forward the annual housing element progress report for the 5th cycle. This progress report is required for all California cities to submit to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And I have a small PowerPoint. So HCD provides a list of RENA numbers, and these regional housing needs assessment numbers are here as follows. So for the 5th cycle is included 2014 to 2021. This annual progress report is for the 5th cycle. So for clarity, this would be the last annual report required for the 5th cycle as it ended in 2021. This is required to be submitted each calendar year by April 1st. The new cycle has already begun, and those numbers have been starting to get gathered for our RENA allocation. For the current RENA allocation for the 5th cycle, we had 4,196. For the 5th cycle, what we developed and what we have entitled are 57 built units and 520 entitled. Here's a little bit of a breakdown to what this looks like for our community. For the extremely low and very low income, we have, these are the remaining allocated numbers for our city. We have, for extremely low and very low income is 946. For low income is 627, for moderate income 650, and for above moderate income is 1,817. So this really shows you where those numbers need to go and what kind of housing is required or needed for our city. Here's a little timeline of how this works. So the annual housing element progress report for the 5th cycle 2021 was made public via website, newspaper, so that was posted publicly. It then went to Planning Commission on March 8th, so a little bit ago, for Planning Commission to vote on and approve to take to City Council, which is where we are today. So City Council, what we are recommending is that the Planning Commission, that you concur with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and that the City Council provide direction for staff to submit this report. And our next step would be submitted. So yeah, our recommendation is to concur with the recommendation of Planning Commission that the City Council provide direction to staff to submit the annual housing element progress report for the 5th cycle. And that concludes my report.
Do I have any council members that have any questions for staff? Go ahead.
So as we keep track of our housing numbers, they're looking at me like, I've heard this question already. I just want you to know that these questions that they get, I've asked them before, so they're ready for them, Just want you to know that. Sorry. So as we track our housing numbers, we are taking that list, and it's off the screen now, but we have certain requirements that we're supposed to meet. And so when a new house gets built, that lowers the required number of houses that remaining to be built. But there are certain things that come along that could cause those houses to fall out of the list. Like, for example, say a low, moderate income house, or even one at the upper end, could burn down. Something could cause it to disappear, and or it could turn into a vacation rental. And my understanding is vacation rentals don't qualify as low and moderate income housing. That is only people that live there. So my question is really simple. Are we tracking in this reporting any homes that, I mean, we got the number adding in. Are we also making sure the numbers that are correct going to the HCD, that we're deducting any, say, for example, vacation rentals that have consumed what was previously low or moderate income housing?
Presented that very interesting dynamic test today. I did have an opportunity today to actually talk with our community development director and our city attorney about this exact question, and staff is actually researching and looking into that. Any short-term vacation rentals that have had permits pulled for any of these numbers, we will go back and look at those and report them accordingly to HCD.
Okay, so then that answer is yes, we're going to look at that and make sure our reporting is accurate to reflect that. I don't think it's a huge number, but that is a number. Okay, great, thank you, that's my question.
Right now, we have the public hearing open. Is there any more testimony in the audience? See nobody coming forth. We'll close the public testimony at this time, and we'll go back to city council discussion. If there's no more discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
It says right here, recommendation.
Motion to enter, what are the motion? What's the motion here? You guys didn't write it down for us. Motion to, what is it?
Item number 9 there.
Accept the report.
Oh,
Go 3-9.
Motion to concur in the recommendation of the Planning Commission that the City Council provide direction to staff to submit the annual housing element progress report for the 5th cycle. Did I get that right?
Sounds like it.
Okay,
Do I have a second?
If you could put those in bold, that
I'll
would be
second.
better. Just joking.
Did you press move on the screen there, Mr.
I did.
And we'll wait for that second now to come up.
I'll save my long-winded
Any other
speech.
discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Move to item number 5 is the transition from at-large to by.
And a break.
Easy, don't take a break till 8 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead, we'll take a break. This item might be a little lengthy on discussion, so we'll take let's come back at 7:35. All right, we're going to have everybody head back to their seats. Tell me, Mr. City Clerk, when you're ready. Good to go? All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. We have moved to item number 5, which is the transition from at-large to by-district elections, public hearing number 3. We're going to get a staff report, and then we'll go into questions for staff. Mr. City Attorney, Mr. City Clerk, I just promoted you. I don't know, is being the City Attorney a promotion? I don't know, sometimes that's one of the hardest jobs. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is public hearing number 3. So on November of 2021, the city received a letter from an attorney asserting that the city's at-large system, election system may violate the California Voting Rights Act and threatening litigation if the city does not voluntarily transition to a district-based election system for electing its city council. December 8th, 2021, the City Council adopted a resolution declaring its intent to voluntarily transition to at-large district elections. On February 15th and March 1st, the City Council held the first 2 required public hearings. At those public hearings, the city received a presentation from staff and its demographer regarding the legal requirements to be considered, the criteria for creating district boundaries, and the public input process. The purpose of those 2 public hearings was to inform the public about the districting processes and to hear from the community on what factors should be taken into consideration while creating district boundaries. Additionally, 3 public workshops have been held to inform the public as well, with the first 2 taking place on February 17th, 2022 and February 24th, prior to the second City Council hearing. A 3rd public workshop was held last week on March 9th, where we had a good turnout. Members of the public were invited to attend in person at City Hall or virtually via the Zoom platform. Since the last public hearing, the demographer has provided 3 draft maps for consideration in accordance with the criteria under the California Fair Maps Act. District boundaries were drawn using the criteria that is outlined in your staff report. As required by law, those draft maps were made available on the city's website on March 8th, at least 7 days prior to today's City Council hearing. Since those maps were released, the demographer has revised draft map 1 and draft map 3 based on the input received thus far. So before you in the agenda packet, or excuse me, before you and also on our website, draft maps 1.1 and 3.1 were produced. Recommendation tonight is to review the draft maps and provide direction on which map the council prefers, or provide direction to the demographer to create a new map or maps to review at the next public hearing, which is scheduled for April 5th, 2022. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you very much. Very thorough. Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. With that, we're going to entertain some questions to staff. I would like to make a comment. Again, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but I did get a briefing from our staff and a council member. Thank you for all that. I have reviewed all the maps, and I have my recommendation on what map I think we should use, but I'll wait for the open a public hearing first and listen to some public testimony. Again, I think this whole council has been in agreement that none of us like this process, but we're forced into it by the threat of litigation. There has been a couple concerning emails that have been sent to us on individuals that I don't think you realize what process we're in and where we're at. These steps, as the city clerk has outlined, has been followed per the law, and all of the law has been followed here. I think our community is very diverse, and I think it's very hard to draw lines in this community, but we have to, and that's what we've been forced into. There are 4 districts on the map based on the mayor being at large, and the reason for that was in 2018 there was 2 measures on the ballot, one being a rotating mayor, one being a 4-year mayor, and the public overwhelmingly supported the 4-year mayor with 2 terms. And being said is the council pretty much made it very clear that the mayor should be at large and there should be 4 council districts, which makes a lot of sense on what the public wanted at that point. I, again, don't completely support this process. I think there should be more public input. I think the process should be not dragged out, that's not the proper word, but dragged longer so that more input could be made, because it's not easy to get everybody on board. A lot of our noticings don't get out there, not because we don't want them out there, it's just the process. They have to be put out quickly. A lot of people have real lives and don't pay attention to everything that goes on in their city till, the last minute sometimes when it becomes hypersensitive in the press or whatever. So it is always tough to make sure we get the proper people. Tonight, you'll see there's only a few people here to make comment on this. So with that said, is there any questions or comments to staff before we begin the public hearing? I see nobody raising hands down this end. Yes, sir.
So, when we were at that workshop, the demographer said anybody was free to submit maps if they wanted to, or suggestions, or contact them. So did anybody contact the demographer with their suggestions? Did anybody, he said people could submit maps if they wanted to. Did anybody submit a map?
I recall seeing one or two maps where the resident drew the map themselves.
Okay, and so I didn't see any of those in front of the council. For why aren't those maps presented to us if they were those? And then also, he said there would be, anybody could, they didn't have to do a map, they could just say, hey, I live in this community and I think this map, A1, 2, or 3, or whatever it is dividing up a community of interest, and that I object to that. And so were there any other comments submitted? We had maps submitted. Were there any other comments submitted?
Mr. Betts, we have the demographer online. Would you like him to unmute
No, I
and
just
answer
want to
that question?
I just want to ask staff if,
I
don't think the demographer can answer why those didn't go in the public record.
He can answer if he received any, though.
Okay, well, we'll ask that. That'll be his question next. But my question immediately is, why aren't those in our agenda packet tonight? Or even here available, put in front of us to see?
Mayor, if I may, my understanding was that during the public workshops, we provided lots of ways for the public to contact their concerns to the demographer, who's meeting they're meeting several requirements as they draw the boundaries. So my understanding is that the demographer received drawn maps, emails, and even phone calls if that was utilized in order to provide the updates that were provided as part of the staff report.
Okay, so can I ask the demographer a question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So is it Mr. Eli or Mr. Eli, did you receive any maps or any comments as were explained that the public could provide?
I received through the city clerk's office a number of comments, most of which were the basis of the two revisions that were drawn out of our original 3 maps. Additionally, I received a map yesterday afternoon, which is not enough time for me to have processed it to make presentation materials, but is enough time for me to say that it's very similar to one of the options that are the 1.1, the draft 1.1, although the differences between it would make it out of population balance.
Okay, so my question is though, so you did get some maps, and this is a public process where everybody's supposed to see what's going on. Are you the only one that gets to see the public input, or do we get to take that into consideration ourselves? And is it out of the ordinary for us to see the public comment that's made? I mean, somebody could have, it's a public hearing process, somebody could have stepped up to the podium here and shown their map today if they wanted to. But my understanding from the meeting, the workshop is that these weren't going to be something that was secret, that the public was going to be able to see these, and that the council, as it's weighing its considerations, there may be the perfect map out there, we don't know. Are you the only one that gets to see these? Is that out of the ordinary for us to see them? Or the public to see what's been suggested publicly?
Well, the things that I saw came through the city clerk's office, so I would assume that they're part of the public record, but I can't comment on what normal procedure is between a city clerk and a council.
Okay, well, I'm asking you in your capacity as, have been through this process before. So there's nothing in the process that says public comment during a public hearing is secret, right? That you're aware of in this process.
That's correct. It should all be public information.
Okay, so I would like to request to staff that all public input and maps be made part of the public record in this proceeding, and specifically provided to council. Now, I understand we have another hearing coming up, but the next hearing that's coming up is only going to be the last one, and I'm presuming by that time, everybody's got a pretty good idea what map they want to go with. But
that's
we'll
the
be
timeline,
making
yeah.
that decision without the council collectively having the benefit of the public input that has been submitted.
I don't understand your following. If you've asked for it and they put it in the public, you have 3 weeks to review it. for
The
next meeting.
public and us
Mhm.
have the opportunity to review and discuss public input in the public hearing
And we'll have
process.
that opportunity one more
But
time.
that hasn't been made a part of the public record that can be discussed tonight. And the next
has not.
meeting, that's true, and the next meeting
That's
is,
because somebody submitted it yesterday.
I got it, but we had a document submitted today from, a development. I mean, it's not unheard of to have this stuff presented.
I think you've made your point to city clerk, and
Okay,
he's
so
going to submit it to us.
I'm making my last point now.
Okay.
So my suggestion is that we may, if we get these presented to us and there's significant detail and public input that this council needs to weigh in this public hearing process, that perhaps we would have between now and 3 weeks from now, would be another public hearing in which we could take into consideration that public input. I don't think it's right to deny.
I don't think anybody disagrees with you, Mr. Betts. I think you've
Okay.
made your point that it needs to be in the record. I don't think anybody here disagrees with you.
Okay, good. I'm just a little disappointed that it didn't show up.
Well, it was received today, so, I mean, they would have to forward it to us today.
Well, all I have to do is send it to us. Okay, got it. I've made my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff or the demographer before we move to the open public hearing? All right, thank you very much. We're going to open the public hearing at this time and take public testimony. We'll start online, or Zoom first. I have one hand raised, Maribel Nunez.
Maribel Nunez, followed by Betsy Sanchez Briones.
Maribel, you're off of mute. Go ahead and make your comments.
Yes, hello. My name is Maribel Nunez. I'm with the Orange and Black Redistricting Alliance. I did send out an email to City Council and to this clerk in regards to the process on the district elections, public hearing. And so I feel that there's still, and we're working with Desert Hot Spring residents and consulting with the Mexican American Legal Defense Education Fund as well. And so for us, it's important just continue upholding the Fair Maps Act to show more hearings. I know the resident turnout has been very low, so we need to figure out what is the outreach strategy and making changes so we have more turnout. And yeah, we're looking forward to submitting a community draft map in consulting with Malda. And yeah, we want to get more input from the community to make some of our maps more reflective, upholding the Voting Rights Act. And yes, look forward, and we will submit something before the 24th of March. I know that City Clerk, Mr. Daryl Serrano, mentioned that we could submit something. So just wanted to thank the City Council and the staff for this hearing, and look forward to working with you all and getting that our new map submission. And then also, I did want to mention about the housing element that was up that we supported, and hopefully we move forward with the sixth cycle on the housing element so that you guys can use opportunities for state grants. So thank you so much for your time, Maribel Nunez. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have two other speakers online. I know you said you didn't want to speak, but we'll open it up one more time just in case you have any comments on this item. I know that Betsy had said she was just here to listen. Did you want to make any comments, Betsy?
Yes. So I just wanted to say I agree with the previous speaker and yourself, Mr. Mayor, about how just having more public input and more hearings would be beneficial. I know that I barely found out about this last week, and I was actually one of the people who was fortunate enough to attend in person. And I think that, word is getting around, and it sounds like more effort is being done. So I think that would be really beneficial, just especially with the extension that was talked about. Yeah. And I did want to provide input on the map a little bit, just like pointing out some of the things that I heard at the meeting last week, which was just using like for example, where Pearson turns, as like, to keep that in mind, as like a boundary of like the community. Or also, I know that one thing that was shared that I don't know if this is the right place to comment on, but is where the areas outside of the boundaries are represented, and keeping that in mind in the future. I know that there was a comment at the beginning talking about different things that are missing in the community, and it looks like those areas are considered like county. So just keeping that in mind as, you know, this community changes, especially with, you know, new developments.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Beverly, I know you're on the screen. Did you have anything you wanted to comment on this item?
Just listening, Mayor. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, you said there wasn't?
I say I'm just listening, Mayor.
Just
Thank
listening.
you very much.
Thank you. We're having a little bit of difficulty hearing up here. I appreciate it. I have nobody else there. I know we have a few people in the audience. Victoria Doyle, I know you filled out a comment sheet. You wanted to say a few words. Please feel free. You will have to turn on the mic there. When you press the middle button, it'll turn red.
Hi, Victoria Doyle. I live on Santa Cruz here in Desert Hot Springs. I'm a little confused. I did submit a letter for the city council, but just in case I showed up anyway. I am vehemently opposed to map number 2, specifically district number 2. If you look on that map, it's just immense, and you lose the equality of sizes. And I understand totally the population requirements and criteria, but on maps 1 and 3, we've been able to deal with that and have more equal sizes of districts. Further, with the size of District 2 and having to live with it for 10 years, there's the potential of more growth in that area and giving too much power to District 2. And I am just, map 1 and map 3 are acceptable. I am violently against map 2.
Thank you for your comments today. Thank you for coming out. Anybody else like to speak? I don't know about the blue cards, but please, this item's open at this point. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak? Ken, come on forward. Just state your name and your time will begin.
Hi, my name's Kent Anderson. I live on Villa Loreto. I don't know if my map or not, but I sent Gerald a map this morning about 6 o'clock, and it turns out the one that I submitted is exactly what 1.1 is.
Perfect.
So I'm here to say I want 1.1. I think it kind of makes sense because I put the line across using Pearson as a natural boundary and as a natural divide. That also kept my area, Villa Loreto, in Area 1, which is part of that whole area there is, I consider, my neighborhood. The other line was down Palm, just to keep that little area, again, intrusions, as I call them, into the districts. So I think it makes more sense, and so I'm just here to say I like 1.1. If we're going to have to do this, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I like the way we had it, but if we got to do it, I'm going to vote for 1.1.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for spending time. I know you came to a couple of different meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see anybody else coming forward. Final chance, final opportunity for this public hearing. We'll close the public comments at this time, and I'll go back to City Council. Whether in the forefront, I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulties on our Zoom, YouTube, on the camera positioning, so you're probably hearing me but seeing Mr. Betts. Oh, it looks like they're fixing cameras now. We apologize. Technology sometimes can be the best and the worst, depending on how it works for you. I agree. Natural boundaries and population was some of the main criteria for this, and some of the first maps that were drawn were kind of like, I don't know about that. And I've lived here my whole life. I've driven the city so much. You kind of learn the neighborhoods, and when people were kind of represented, if they're going to be represented where they should be represented. When maps 1.1 and 3.1 came out, I was a little more relieved that we were understanding, and I know the demographer has to go through a process, but I was really glad that we finally got some people at the last meeting who were able to make some comments enough to really, to make, or have the demographer draw some really good lines. I would definitely support 1.1, maybe be persuaded 3.1, but I think the population count then goes off by a lot more. 1.1 makes it pretty darn equal. And to the comment that Betsy made, we agree that, and I believe how many years, every 5 years is it that you have to go back? 10 years. So every 10 years you have to go back, redraw the lines based on the population and whatever the criteria is to do that. So that would happen. So if the city did grow to those unrepresented areas that are county now but could be annexed into the community later, that would be taken into consideration for the next update to the community districts. Gosh, I'm getting tired. This time change killed me. With that said, you'll see other communities going through those exercises right now. I think some are doing it less than 10 years in, but we could request that if we needed to. Is that how it works? If we started to annex or something happened, you could request an earlier update to the community districts. I think Palm Springs is going through this, and they've only been in districts for 5 years. So those are opportunities, and maybe something that we want to look at with the final draft of this at the next meeting that we have on public hearings. Maybe we make that comment that every 5 years we go through this exercise rather than waiting 10. It might be important if the community continues to grow, as we hope it does, and make sure the proper representation is in the areas. But that would be my comments. I would definitely support 1.1. I appreciate everybody coming out. I really wish we could drag this out longer, get more community input, and yeah, but it's just we're under a timeline with the state law, and we have to follow state law at this point, or we could be sued. And the last thing you want to see is our city lose tax dollars going to lawsuits and not being able to put firefighters and cops and build roads. Those are what we want to do. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would echo a couple of your comments. I really want to thank Mr. Ely and the folks over at at Baird Demographers. I think they really took into account, as Mr. Anderson pointed out, the comments that were made during the Wednesday evening meeting. I'm leaning towards 1.1, 3.1. I don't see a lot of difference between the two. I think that they made a huge improvement on the original 3 maps, which looked like a cross between a jigsaw puzzle and a North Carolina congressional map. So I think we're on the right track. I do want to reiterate, I have talked to a lot of people in the community. I think every single one of us up here at all of our community meetings has encouraged people to come out. I've encouraged Mr. Anderson and Ms. Doyle that you've come out, and we need to have that input. There's only one more chance to do it. I don't know if we can make a lot more tweaks to these maps, but I do appreciate the public comments that have come out there. But the one common denominator with all of the public comments that I'm getting is both, why are we doing this, and why are we doing it so fast? And as the mayor correctly pointed out, we have a gun to our head. We literally have a gun to our head on this. The state law sets the timeline. The state law sets the number of meetings we have. And all of that is driven by the letter threatening a lawsuit. And I have asked, and I haven't had a chance to check, did we put that letter up on the website for our community to be able to read during the demography? So we did. It is up there. So I would encourage everybody to go to the city webpage, pull up that demand letter, and you'll see exactly the gun that's pointed to our heads trying to do this. And we have no choice in that timeline. We all wish we could take a lot more public input and take a lot more thoughtful debate. Unfortunately, we just can't. And this is a new thing for this city. It's new for all of us, and it's confusing to residents. It's confusing to us. We're all in this together. Everybody up here on this dais is in agreement that we have to go through and do this, and we're going to make the best of it that we can. We appreciate the public input. We need more of it, and I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see what happens between now and I believe April 5th is when we have to make our final decision, correct?
Yes.
So that's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Before I go to the next council member, I wanted to throw this in because I would like to hear other council members' comments on this. We know that 3 of us, myself, Mr. Betts, Mr. Nunez, all live in one district. That's not going to change. There's just not enough room for the maps to change. That leaves two of the council members that are up in this November, and I don't know what politically they're going to do. They'll make their own announcements on that, but that leaves technically 3 districts open. So what is the process on picking the 2 districts that will be voted on this November? How does that process work? And I think the city council needs to know that before the next meeting, so you can properly make that decision on which 2 of the 3 districts will be the ones up in November. Mr. Betts?
I'm not following your comment there.
If Ms. Pye or if Mr. Gardner or if both decide not to run, you have 3 open districts.
Okay.
Which 2 districts of the 3 would you put on the ballot? Because you
If
only
they
have-
both weren't going to run?
Correct. If they
Well,
were
that's
both
a
going
heck
to
of
run,
a
or one
hypothetical.
or one's not going to run, and the other's going to run, or if they both run, the question is, do we still have to pick which 2 districts are going to be up?
Well, that's a great question. So I don't
I'd
have
love
the
to hear
answer.
opinions.
I don't have the answer on that one. It's a hypothetical. I have to read people's minds, let them know if they're going to run or not. So,
I think it's a question that does deserve answering, because regardless of whatever scenario comes forth, 1 district will not vote this year.
And we will have 1 district not represented.
actually 2 are not going to vote.
Well, 2, but 2, assuming District 2's boundary stayed the same, both you and Mr. Nunez were elected to a 4-year term that does not expire until 2024. And so, yeah, that doesn't change.
So for sure, District 2 is not going to vote.
For sure, District 2 wouldn't vote because you have 2 elected representatives already living there.
And on a side note, we all know what's going to happen is, why aren't I voting for a city council?
Yes,
That's what we don't
exactly.
like about
And
this
that's one of
process.
the other
The
comments.
city clerk can't wait for that day.
Yeah, I know, and I get that question a lot when I have pointed out to people that half the city is not going to vote for a city council person this year, and that upsets a lot of people, and rightfully so. But we discussed that at the Wednesday meeting last week, and as the demographer and Mr. Huerta pointed out, when you go to districting for the first time, that is always the case. There is always going to be a segment of the city that does not fall into that cycle. Just like when they redistricted our state senate seats, normally we would vote for a state senator this year where we live. With the new districting stuff, we don't. Here in Desert Hot Springs, we don't vote for a state senator for 2 more years. Normally, we would vote for one this year, but with the drawing, we don't. That's what happens when you go through a districting cycle. So that would be a good question for our city attorney to research and to bring back to us.
Mr. Betts, any more comments?
Didn't know I made mine yet. I was just responding to your question. So my understanding is we are still in a public hearing and will be through, what's the date?
April 5th.
April 5th, so the public hearing remains open. And so at that point in time, we will, after taking in all the testimony and all the public input, then we'll make up our minds, and that's the way the process is supposed to work. And then we have, what I understood from public comment tonight is there's people who are actively working to present a map. And then there's other maps that have been presented, so we need to take all that in. And I appreciate that we are on a calendar-wise, a tight schedule, but we do have many, 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 many hours of time between now and April 5th in which we can, public hearing time. So while the calendar is short, we do have available time. I don't think we're at the point where we don't have to do this, quote, fast. We could schedule, there's nothing says we can't schedule another public hearing to consider and discuss, and if it lasted a half an hour or an hour, it's only 1 hour out of many hundreds of hours available to us. So I would certainly be in favor of giving this more time, especially since we've had a public comment. What indicated to me is that some group is out there working very diligently to put together numbers and not just drawing on a map, but making sure they meet the different requirements for the population distribution and everything else, and looking at communities of interest and everything else. So I would like to see if we get another hearing. I think it's safe to go out on a limb here and express some opinion, at least on map 3, that it's gone from bad to worse. I don't know. I know that there was some concern raised about a district that's so small an area that it hardly seems like a district. And, somebody mentioned that with map 2, district map 2 and District 2 taking up almost the entire city. So I don't think that looks like that one's, you know, that's been universal that nobody liked that one. Although maybe somebody come forward that loved it, but anyhow, I think one of the requirements that for me was that some of this jumbled mess that we saw that was dividing up communities, that we need to make sure that that's taken into consideration. I'm not completely satisfied that what we've been presented here addresses that concern, although I can certainly see it in the case of the people that live over there on Pearson. You know, that was a great correction to, you know, take in community input. What the demographer said during the meeting, and he can correct me if I'm wrong because I think he's still listening, is that we can play, that we have room to move. It doesn't have to be an exact 10%, it doesn't have to be an exact split. And the way it came out to it was about 8,100 or 8,200 per district. It was only off by 100 people. He did pretty good on the first set of maps of getting it right down the line. But we have 10% deviation that we can take into account what we anticipate might be future growth, and consider that if somebody's got a big area open land, and, you know, like District 2's got a lot of open land, we get a bunch of development out there. You maybe have somebody in District 2 that's representing way more people than the rest of the city. So we have that option as long as we stay within the 10%. And I hope Mr. Eli will weigh in if he thinks I'm getting this wrong. And so we have, wherever there's vacant land that could be developed, we have that to consider. And then if we decided that there's communities of interest that are being still separated, or that we got jagged lines, that we could still have some room, wiggle room there. I think what we see here improving is that we want straight lines, not something that looks like a jigsaw puzzle. And I think we've all seen examples of terribly gerrymandered maps where you've got little fingers going down and winding around, and, you know, but you're going, well, what the heck was that all about? And so we're close, but I don't think we're there yet. So personally, myself, I'm going to hold. I don't know which map I like at this point, other than to say 3.1's looking like it went the wrong direction, and or didn't go in the right direction anyhow. And that I'd like to wait and see what input's going to come in. And I think we certainly need to afford the public, who's a partner in this process, the opportunity to weigh in more fully than just a last meeting when we're all going to decide this. So that's my comment for now. Thank you.
Mr. Nunez.
Thank you. My thing is realistically the timeline. I don't think we're given enough time to really look at our diverse city, how it's spread out demographically, socioeconomically. During the workshop, I did recommend or ask if it was doable that we did 2 districts, and we had 2 representatives for each district. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me, because it would satisfy the lawsuit to go into districts, and then over the course of, like you say, 5 years, we can really, you know, home in on what those districts look like. And by then, hopefully, we have, you know, more development that we can include. These maps really don't show the sphere of influence of what those districts that would be annexed into the city, what they look like. So that's another thing I would like to see. But I really think that we should consider looking at and entertaining the idea and seeing what 2 districts look like. That way it gives us more time to really focus on doing this right, getting more public involved, hitting the churches, hitting the senior centers to make sure that everybody has their input on what these districts look like. 2 districts really, to me, make sense. That's probably the only way right now that I would see without hitting this deadline, is to make things happen to satisfy the lawsuit. That's it.
Ms. Pye.
We have a deadline, and we have to work with it. I'd like to ask Mr. Eli, why did he not take the suggestion that Mr. Nunez proposed?
Having 2 districts, each electing 2 people, still would be considered at large under the law. Multi-member districts would not protect. In my experience, you should probably refer to your attorney for confirmation, but I don't believe that anything that involves multi-member districts would provide protection from litigation under the CVRA.
Okay, thank you. You said, was it 3-1 or just 3 that you were in disagreement with?
I didn't say I was in
3-1, I
disagreement with any of them. I said it went from bad to worse, so maybe I guess I did express some opinion there, but 3.1 looked like the area got really narrow. I think that's the district where you are. And I mean, I ain't gonna have any trouble walking that district at my campaign time.
Okay, I'm fine, I'm
That
fine.
was my question, that was my.
I'm fine, I'm fine. I do believe that what Councilmember Betts said, if someone has another map to draw, that we should wait for that. But don't wait till the last minute, because we're starting all over again. But I do believe we should wait for that, and that's it.
I had a few comments. First of all, like you heard up here, that everybody doesn't like the timeline, but we're forced into a timeline. If the council wants to make a decision to extend the timeline and take a chance on being sued, I'd be happy to entertain that idea. But that's what we've been threatened with. The other thing is having any more public hearings from now in the next 2.5 weeks, to notice them, get people in here, it's going to be pretty tough. So I would suggest that if anyone wants to meet without more than 2 council members there, meet with up to 2 council members in a room, you're more than welcome to invite them. If somebody's drawing their own maps, I think it's been very clear tonight that the city clerk will make sure that they forward those off to us for our decision making. But unfortunately, we're tied into this April 5th date. So at this point, I don't think there's any extension of that unless the council wants to take the chance, and we would have to make that known tonight. Before we leave tonight, I don't know if there's enough information. This is basically a public hearing to hear what the public's testimony is on these current draft maps. I'm giving my opinion that I think map 1.1 meets the requirements of the lines being drawn in neighborhoods. I've lived here a long time, and I really do believe the neighborhoods are represented in that map. I agree, and what I agree about those map on 1.1 is that each area has its own growth. I do not believe that we need to pay the demographer to go into the county and what if we ever annex that area, what it would look like, because if we did annex that area, we would then have to draw new lines and new districts, so we'd be forcing that anyways. And we don't have any plans as of right now, any goals from this council to annex any new area at this time. If it does come down the line in the future, we'll have to consider redrawing the districts. The current areas, each district for all 4 districts has room to grow on 1.1. If Tuscan Hills, which is the development to the northeast on Pearson, was to develop, that would give growth in District 3. In District 2, if Skyborn continues to grow or any other development out towards the west, that gives room for that district to grow. District 1 probably has the least opportunity to grow residentially. It has a lot of area to grow commercially, but if you look at our general plan map, I think there's a little bit of opportunity there, just not a lot. But District 4 has great opportunity to grow if annexation and or any infill development is to take place in the spa zone or other areas. So I do believe the demographer did a good job on taking the comments that was made and drawing this map, and that would be the one I support now. After I see more comments from the public and maybe some more comments from the council at the April 5th meeting, I might change my mind a little bit, but I think that's pretty darn equal, and it is equally populated for the most part. They're within 100 people. So I think the demographer did a good job on listening to what was been said so far. I'll go back this way.
Thank you. I would actually ask the city attorney to answer Mr. Eli's question as far as that, because I know the city of Palm Desert has 2 districts, and they're currently voting for that to remain the same also. So I want to see how that ties in. How is that different from us?
Right, so at this point, I don't have an answer for you. I will go back and look at the law to see whether or not those two districts, if we did do two districts, would it technically be considered at large under the CVRA? I don't have an answer for you this evening, but I will look at it.
I do have an answer for that because I needed to research that because I was very interested in that question and how they did that. They weren't under a lawsuit. They actually went out and did it before the lawsuit. They formed their own two districts to begin with before receiving any letters. And now, 4 years later, I think it is, and now they're considering individual districts.
I believe that there was a council member that's on council now that sued them. That's why they went to districts.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I was just told by a council member that whether they were or weren't, they're now looking at 5 districts, so there will be 5 districts eventually. So probably, you're probably correct, it's probably a lawsuit. So answering your question, it probably is at large, and I'm sure Mr. Eli's right, so. Any other questions? Comments, yes?
I would think it's certainly worth examining that question on the 2 districts. I think if you look at this process, an argument could be made that, maybe 2 districts, just hearing this, considering it first time as 2 districts, you may have better chance at more equal representation than you do with 1. The history of these has been, as they've gone to districts, starting with Palmdale, you ended up with less of the desired representation than more. Palmdale went exactly the opposite way of the people who brought the case intended. Once they finally went to districts, I think that's been the case in other places I've heard from other council members. My understanding was Palm Desert, I think you're correct, Mr. Nunez, is going to remain with 2 districts. I think one of the council members submitted a map that they approved, and I've talked to, them down there, asked them, what they got going. So.
Who'd you talk to?
Kathleen Kelly.
Okay, and it just told you the total opposite of what I just told you.
Okay, so that's where I think the appropriate thing is, we'll just get an
Yeah,
answer.
I'm just asking a question because I really want to ask the council
Well, I think
members.
the thing we'll do is just get an answer. Well, I guess when we can know, we got a city
I
attorney
don't
here
think
to let us
anybody ever
know.
said we
and
wouldn't get an answer.
Another question I would have on that.
Answered. I was just wondering why you were saying something different than what I heard.
I don't know. Let's get them both.
It's funny, we talked to the same person, they had 2 different answers.
Well, let's get on the phone together and we'll talk.
We'll do that.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
Okay, so I talked to him yesterday while I was in line at the Habit Burger.
Great.
But by the way, that Habit Burger is
Isn't
really
it great?
good. Have you been there?
We should have one here.
I don't need any more Habit Burger, but dang, we need a Habit Burger in town. The other point is, I think we had somebody who did file suit, and as long as they're in agreement, I mean, at some point in time, they can sit there and say, no, they don't agree with this process. Is that correct? Or, well, with a can of worms, but don't they have some say in this, the people who threatened suit?
Yes, but I don't see them here this evening, but they did, draft a letter, and they do know about these public hearings.
Yeah, okay, but on the question of whether they'd be inclined to go with 2 districts or 4 or 5 or whatever they wanted.
I think number 1 is for me to research it. Let me
Yeah,
double
that's a
check the
great
law
idea.
on that, and then.
Good idea, I don't want to say any more. And the other thing is that I am not in favor of extending any deadline beyond April 5th, and maybe my position was not understood clearly. Between now and April 5th, we got a lot of production time that we can take a look at this, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and spend a little bit more time in this chair to take a look at all the options, and we have more than enough indication from the public that they're rolling up their sleeves right now and they deserve a fair hearing. And if that takes one more meeting, I don't think that's anything difficult. We call them all the time, and it could be all 5 of us here if they just simply post the notice within the required 3 days or whatever it is notice. The other point I want to bring up, and this came up at the workshop and it came up again tonight, is what about this area in white that, people feel like they're part of Desert Hot Springs, and we get this all the time. And the way the process works, this is only within the city limits that this affects. And while we might think of Desert Edge or somewhere around here, down by Indian Avenue or wherever in the white section of the map that is part of Desert Hot Springs, it's not officially within the city boundaries. And so to answer that question, if the public speaker's still listening, is once that becomes part of the city, then it becomes part of the city process. But until then, you could push for annexation. It'd be wonderful. I think we'd all like that. So anyhow, I just wanted to answer that question since it's come twice now. is the maps, as you see them here, are the boundaries of the city, and everywhere else is outside the city. And so that's what I got. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to reiterate what I said 3 more times and act like it's their time that they said it for the first time? No one? Okay, then we'll move on. This is not to be voted on tonight. We're not looking for any motion. This is just direction. I think you've heard enough from the council and public. I want to thank the demographer and the consultant for coming back tonight. We have one more scheduled on April 5th. If something gets scheduled in between that, before that, we'll let the public know. Thank you very much. Move to item administrative calendar at this time. This is item number 6, award of professional services agreement, Musco Sports Lighting. Mr. Haker.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Youth soccer programs and junior All-American football and cheer programs currently utilize Mission Springs Park fields for all practices and games. At night, Mission Springs Park currently has approximately over 100,000 square feet of unusable athletic space due to lack of sufficient lighting. The area is located at the southern section of the grass fields at Mission Springs Park. Staff requested a photometric study to be performed by Musco Sports Lighting, LLC. The photometric study concluded that there was not sufficient enough lighting for youth athletic programs to be performed safely. On the left, you can see what a properly lit field looks like. On the right, you can see the area that we're talking about without the lighting. Staff reviewed the Musco Sports Lighting LLC photometric study and proposal to create and design it and install 3 light structures on the southern section of Mission Springs Park. A photometric study was concluded in the proposal guaranteeing light levels of 15-foot candles average with a 25-to-1 uniformity. This lighting guaranteed would provide sufficient lighting to make this location usable at night for youth athletic programs. Desert Hot Springs Little League programs currently utilize Warman Park fields for all practices and games. At night, Warman Park currently has approximately 21,000 square feet of unusable athletic space due to lack of sufficient lighting. This area is located on the northeast corner of the baseball fields at Warman Park. This is the little league field. Yeah. Staff requested a photometric study to be performed by Musco Sports Lighting. The photometric study concluded that this was not sufficient lighting for youth athletic programs to be performed safely. Again, you can see on the left, this is the big field, and you can see the sufficient lighting on the right. Even before the sun goes down, it's already getting dark around home plate. Staff reviewed the Musco Sports Lighting LLC photometric study and proposal to create and design and install 2 structure lighting systems. A photometric study was included in the proposal guaranteeing light levels of 15-foot candles average with a 25-to-1 uniformity. This lighting guarantees that it would provide sufficient lighting to make this area usable for youth athletic programs. You can see the 2 areas circled on the northeast area. Additionally, pedestrian lighting will be added to both the current Musco Sports Lighting and the proposed Musco Sports Lighting. These lights will ensure safe visibility for all pedestrians leaving the fields after the sports lights were turned off. You see the blue lines show where the lighting will be proposed. You can see the walking paths for both the little field and then also for the big field, especially by the stairs. Additionally, to provide additional service to our community that is not able to attend the youth athletic programs, a state-of-the-art streaming system will be installed as part of this scope of work. Musco Vision utilizes a 2-camera system with artificial intelligence technology that tracks the movement of the field of play. Staff also reviewed the proposal of the state-of-the-art streaming system, which is 2 systems will be installed at Mission Springs Park to cover 2 soccer fields, and 1 system will be installed at Warman Park to cover the main baseball field. And this is a video, hopefully it plays, of what you could stream while you're not able to be at the game live. If not, you could visit the website too. I could send that out. It's muscovision.com. You could Google Musco Vision, but it is a streaming service. Nope. It is a streaming service that will provide people an opportunity to watch the games and not be there. During the review, staff determined that Musco Sports Lighting met the qualifications for awarding a professional service agreement without the requirement of a Our request for proposal is defined in the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code 3.44.180A. This selection of professional services to be based on demonstrated competency and professional qualifications necessary for satisfactory performance of services required, as so determined by the department head. The emphasis for selection is therefore based upon qualification rather than the lowest price. Musco Sports Lighting LLC meets the qualifications by providing the highest quality service based on the following items. Musco Sports Lighting is the current provider for all the City of Desert Hot Springs Park sports lighting. All sports lighting equipment in the park is Musco equipment. All upgrades and improvements must be Musco equipment to function properly. Musco Sports Lighting has its own proprietary technology, parts and service that no other company can provide. They also have over 46 years of design and manufacturing of all sports lighting systems from hometown Little Leagues to professional sports stadiums worldwide. If approved, this professional service agreement will include the design, materials, electrical engineering, geotechnical engineering, and installation of 5 Musco LED lighting equipment, 2 security light poles, and 3 Musco vision camera systems. Staff is recommending authorizing the city manager to execute a professional service agreement with Musco Sports Lighting LLC for the design and installation of light structure systems and Musco vision camera systems for Mission Springs Park and Warman Park in the amount not to exceed $663,990, with a contingency amount of $66,399, which is 10%, for the additional work as approved by the city. The total budget for this project is $730,389. This is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open up to public comments. I see nobody in the audience or anybody on Zoom. Everybody's left us on Zoom. No public comments out in the audience. We'll close public comments. I'm going to just say that this is much needed. It's, being a Little League coach, and I'm sure Mr. Nunez can tell you, being an AYSO coach, that these fields have been they needed to be lit a long time ago, but there was only so much money to go around when we renovated these parks 10 years ago, and unfortunately there wasn't enough money till now to get them to where they need to be. So thank you, staff, for getting the work done. I know there's been comments by AYSO, Junior All-American, and Little League on being able to utilize those fields in the darker hours of the evening, and it really will go a long ways, because I heard Roberta is going to double Little League next year from 400 to 800, so we're going to need the nighttime. We're going to need to play till midnight to be able to accomplish all the teams. So I'm definitely in support of this. Mr. Nunez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wow. This is something our residents can be very, very proud of staff for. I think we went beyond, beyond just to be able to be there live, sitting from home and watching your kids play or practice is huge. That's what I can say is the first place in the desert, to do that. And if not, that's just amazing. I can't wait. The only questions I would ask is that, how do we keep our children safe during that process? I would ask maybe that we have people register with the city. That way people are just not watching kids in general playing sports. Also, we can use those posts for later use, for maybe put cameras in for safety. So just, I think this is great. I can't wait to see it in action. I can't wait to use it. Wow, Mr. Mayor, you're going to be able to see yourself umpiring.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be crazy. I'll be famous for the first time. Ms. Pye, anything?
You said you can stream for basketball. What about, pardon me?
What about basketball? That what you're asking?
Soccer.
So we have in this proposal 2 fields for soccer and one system for the big field at the Little League at Warman.
Okay. It does work. I can see my grandchild in Chicago.
Oh, awesome. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple things. This is really cool. I love the technology. I think it's great, and I agree with my fellow council members. We've needed to have this for some time. I was looking at that last slide. Is that from an umpire training video? Because it was so blurry that you can't see anything, and I'm assuming that that's where that's coming from. you know. We all know how umpires are.
We get enough razzing from being an umpire, then I don't need it from Mayor Pro Tem, too.
But no, this is, when we got the staff packet, it was a little confusing to read with all of these numbers and all kinds of weird things, but it makes total sense. I'm glad we've got the money to do this, and I'm excited to move forward with it, and I think our Little League is really going to shine with this, so I'm happy to support it.
Mr. Betts?
Is that a representation of the video quality in that picture?
No, it should have been, we tried it out and for whatever reason it wasn't working, but there is multiple videos and you get high definition on it. It's honestly a great system.
Okay, so the, we've, first off, this has been years that we've needed this. I mean, all of us received pictures from people down there at Mission Springs Park showing us how dark it was, and youth All-American football, having to play in the dark and having a place and saying, why can't we get to the part of this field lit? So for sure we need that. We didn't go out to bid on this item, and I know there's other sports lighting providers that are out there. There's one in Texas and another one in Illinois that are reaching out to the West Coast. What was the reason for not going out to bid?
So all of our lighting systems must go. So our skate parks, our BMX parks, our current soccer fields, our baseball fields, and even the corporate yard park has a design for must go.
Okay, so talking to, I forget the name of them, they're out of Texas, and they were quick to say they could have saved us 10 or 20%. And I said, okay, well, do you ever have any situations where you're the only bidder because it's all your equipment? And they said, well, yeah, we go to that also. So I'm going to buy that explanation from staff. We got the guy to admit to it, but so I'm uncomfortable with that. I do remember a time, and I think the mayor will remember a time when we were sold a state-of-the-art camera system, and it didn't turn to be so state-of-the-art. We've got a bunch of $1 million worth of cameras around this city that, well, they secret out, but they don't work. So how much is the camera component of this?
I don't have it in front of me, but it is in the staff report. It has the breakdown in the staff report.
Well, I don't have this. I'm going to have a hard time getting that out of there. But it was $100,000, I guess, is what I'm remembering, for streaming services in the fields. And I'm wondering if there's another way to do that. I know I can stream with Facebook and YouTube and everything else, and there may be another way to accomplish that without spending $100,000. I'm all in favor of the idea, but that's a lot of money to spend on a camera system. And I know Musco's they're not in the business of actually making this. This is something that another vendor is supplying through them, is my understanding.
So they're actually the system that does the streaming and does the manufacturing and the installation.
They're the developer of the streaming system?
They have their own system, yeah.
Okay, but I understand they've shopped that out, but I could be wrong. That's just what I got when I did a little research on this one. But still, $100,000 for streaming, and something that's obviously going to become obsolete as technology advances. And I really question that part of it. I'd like to see that feature, but I think we could go back to the drawing board and get a little better result on that part of it. No grant available for any of this stuff? We're just spending $700,000 out of the general fund for this, or out of the parks diff fee? Where's this money coming from?
So actually, it is a Sourcewell priced product, so we get the discount for being a Sourcewell member, so that we get the same price as any other city
But not
in
a
the
grant?
United States.
No grant for this?
No, but this is coming out of,
So there isn't a grant, excuse me, there isn't grant funding available for this, but the funding is available in the city's general capital improvement fund.
Okay, so we're still spending money, but it's coming out of the general capital improvement fund. And so, so if we go with the camera, which I guess the council's kind of basing on their remarks, we've got soccer is getting a camera, Little League's getting a camera, soccer's getting 2, Little League's getting 1, and Junior All-American, while they're getting lighting, is still left out of the mix and not getting a camera at all. Is that what's happening?
Junior All-American plays at the high school.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're no longer at the field that?
No, they practice at the field, but they don't play their games there. They play their games on the high school field.
Okay, so they'll probably just use phones to record and stream live, huh?
Not necessarily, because if they're at Mission Springs, they could be able to use the soccer.
If they went back there, yeah.
For practice, even for practice, they can watch their kids practice.
Well, maybe now that it's lit, they won't have to pay how much do they have to pay the school?
I don't know what their deal is with the school right now.
Yeah, but maybe now the field's lit, they'll be going back there.
But we're
anyhow,
building those new fields.
The question is, they don't get a camera, right?
So the cameras are attached, the two cameras at the soccer park at Mission Springs Park are focused on the soccer fields themselves. So if they play on those soccer fields.
So
then
who's
they'll be
ever
able to
playing
stream it.
there will get the camera benefit.
Mhm.
Okay, good. That answers that. Then they're not left out, is what you're saying.
And don't forget, we're building a new park, which will have a Junior All-American football field, which we'll request at that time. We should
Okay,
request.
well, my only question, and then the other thing is the contingency of 10%. Mr. Mayor, you brought this up before. Everywhere other I've served on other commissions, the standard is 5% on the contingency.
No, the standard's 10%. Yeah, standard's 10%.
So we had one come through here that was 20%?
Yeah.
And you backed that one down?
Correct.
Okay, so, all right, well, I'll go with 10% then. It seemed to me that if these guys are so, if they're getting a sole bid, they should be able to come in pretty darn exact without having to use. Do you anticipate we're going to use that contingency?
I don't, but it's a project. It could be something that comes along throughout the process.
Okay.
They're digging holes, remember that.
Well, I'm sure not going to vote against the kids. Holy cow.
All right, I have no other comments. I'll entertain a motion.
Second, Mark?
Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, staff. Really do appreciate that.
Item 7 is award professional services agreement for compensation update of the comprehensive update of the City of Desert Hot Springs zoning ordinance, Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code Title 17 zoning. Were you, Eric? Okay.
Yes. Good evening again. So I have a small presentation for you. This presentation is for exactly what you just said, awarding the professional services agreement for a comprehensive update of the City of Desert Hot Springs zoning ordinance, otherwise known as Title 17. Small update, a small timeline of the series of events. So 2019, grants were awarded, SB2 and LEAP. October 2nd of 2021, there was a release for requests for proposals. On December 2nd, that closed. And here we are today to show you the findings and give you a recommendation. So why clean up Title 17? The City of Desert Hot Springs adopted its new general plan on May 26th of 2020. And the land use maps and zoning maps were also adopted as part of the general plan update. Title 17 zoning of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code needs to be updated to be consistent with land uses and permitted uses in the various zoning designations, as well as remove any contradicting development standards, which is what we currently have. So the consultant scope of work includes reviewing and identifying goals, objectives, and implementation strategies to ensure that the two documents, new zoning code and general plan update, will be consistent and complementary to each other. A thorough review of the existing code is needed to eliminate any code contradictions and provide a reader-friendly code. They are going to assess the advantages, shortcomings, and gaps to the existing zoning code and assist in clarifying any parts of that need updated. They will prepare draft updates to the zoning code for review by staff, as well as giving us a final version to present to you and Planning Commission. So the RFP evaluation, through the RFP, we had two companies submit, CASC Engineering and Consultant and Chambers Group. Staff evaluated both. CASC was chosen by staff due to their relevant experience, the well-developed proposal they provided us, and their hands-on approach that they have communicated with staff. The depth of detail as well that they've gone into other very similar projects, as well as their experience working in the Coachella Valley. So what we recommend is staff that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement for a comprehensive update of the City of Desert Hot Springs zoning ordinance, Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code Title 17 zoning, that will coincide with the general plan update, which was adopted on May 26, 2020, with Cask Engineering and Consulting, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $78,865. If there are changes to the professional services agreement, council authorizes the city manager to negotiate and approve with the city attorney as to form. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for the report. Do we have anybody that's chimed in on Zoom that would like to speak on this item? No? I have nobody in the audience right now, so we'll close public comment and we'll move to council comments. I'll start on this end.
Quick question, at the very last, you said there's some adjustments, the city manager will deal with those. Is that going to carry an added cost? No?
No,
Okay.
that will not.
Okay, and this is, and is this company you're recommending, have they done work with the city previously?
I do not believe they have.
Okay, they didn't work on the general plan?
No.
That's the only question I got, thank you.
Anything, Mayor Protem? Mr. Nunez?
The only thing I would ask is that, they get heavily involved in the community aspect and workshops and making sure that they offer an opportunity to hear from the residents when considering any proposals.
Ms. Pye? I have a motion by Ms. Pye.
Your mic wasn't on it.
I have a motion by Ms. Pye. Go ahead and press the button to move.
I'll second.
Go ahead and second it on the screen, please. Any other comments? Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 8 is award, I'm sorry, did you need to read? No. Item number 8 is the award professional services agreement for architectural services for design and detached accessory dwelling units. You can be you, Eric?
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
Almost there. This, what I'm going to be going over is awarding professional services agreement for architectural services for design of detached accessory dwelling units. Timeline very similar to the last one, 2019, the grants were awarded, SB2 and LEAP. October 2nd, we released the request for proposals. December 2nd, that was closed. And here we are today to provide the recommendations as well as our findings. So what is an ADU and why have a pre-designed ADU? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit with complete independent living facilities for one or more persons. So why have pre-approved ADUs? The intent behind an ADU is to make it affordable. So part of having a pre-design, it would make it affordable for people interested in developing one on their property. It would also allow for an expedited plan review since it was already done. This also lowers development costs significantly as we see increase in development. It also shortens the construction timeline so that there isn't an architectural period where you are dealing with that. And it also creates consistent neighborhood architecture, which is very important to maintain that part of each part of our community. So, and this is also a progressive approach at making affordable housing accessible to our residents, which is a very hot topic right now. The consultant scope of work. So the consultant will work closely with staff to provide 2 complete sets of building plans consisting of title sheet, plot plan, foundation plan, floor plan, framing, cross sections, design details, elevation, truss plans, energy calculations, green code requirements, and engineering calculations for each of the 4 ADU types. So in total you have 8. And those 4 ADU types are a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom. This aligns with the common architecture, or will align with common architecture in the city of Desert Hot Springs, and will be reviewed by staff prior to approval of the designs. This is going to go through the plan review process that any other development would go through. So in the RFP evaluation, we found that YNG had relevant experience. They were very responsive, familiar with the Coachella Valley, they were very easy to work with and showed us a lot of different flexible timelines and how quick they are to address some of our concerns with wanting to get this completed. And they also understand our local architecture. So their scope of work, we already went through this portion. So our recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement for architectural services with YNG Architects, which was the architect that was chosen, which actually this slide was supposed to be. YNG was the architect that was chosen. They were actually the only ones, to clarify, that submitted a RFP for this, but going through, we did evaluate them, and they were very well qualified for this. So our recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement for architectural services with YNG Architects in an amount not to exceed $158,400. If there are any changes to the professional services agreement, council authorizes the city manager to negotiate and approve with the city attorney as to form. And that concludes my report.
Do I have anybody on Zoom that would like to make public comments? I have nobody in the audience. I have a couple questions for you, Eric. And I'm just curious, where are we posting our RFPs?
So we post them on the website, and we as well reach out to consultants independently too that we work with. Unfortunately, and for these two, these are the responses that we received.
Are you using Planet also?
I believe so, but I can verify
Does
that.
anyone on staff know, are we using Planet?
I know that Planet is used specifically with a lot of our public works projects. I'm not sure if they were used in this particular circumstance, but as Eric just mentioned, we actually personally sent this RFP out to several local architects in the hopes that they would submit, and unfortunately, we only got the one submission back.
Makes sense. And then why is it taking so long to award the contract? Was that partially because there was only one and
If I can speak to that, so both of these items tonight, the one previous to this and this one, we've had a lot of staffing changes in community development. And so now we have Eric there and we're able to move these things
I heard
forward.
Eric can do everything in 24 hours.
Yeah, we wanted to jump on this one right away because as part of our SCAG meetings and many other things, we've noticed that this is very important. So we wanted to make sure we brought this forward as soon as possible.
My questions were mostly leading, just so the public understands if anybody does decide to watch this later, that we're not sitting on these. There was some staffing issues. That's the reason this was delayed a little bit. And if your firm's out there and not getting these RFPs, please get on our list. Mr. Nunez?
Thank you. And it goes back, since we redid the website, is it an easier process to submit a bid for, well, any bid to be part of the RFP process?
Yes, things are much more streamlined and things are much more obvious on the website than they were previously.
Okay, great. And then Eric, a part of the ADU, can a remodel be a part of the ADU or no? It has to be a separate unit.
For this architecture type, it is a detached accessory dwelling unit, but they are working with staff to provide any sort of direction that they need for the design. So if there are any suggestions or anything like that, you can feel free to let us know.
Well, I just bring up the question of, like, if someone does a detached, how far away from the home itself do they need to be to, you know?
Oh, the typical distance that a residence needs to be away from an accessory dwelling unit, although I can add a caveat that accessory dwelling units do have very distinct independent restrictions on zoning that are mandated by the state. Typically, it is 10 feet away from a residence that an accessory dwelling unit is constructed.
So, Mr. Mayor, yeah, he does know his stuff.
I've sat in a couple of conversations with him, and he is a very smart man. He makes me smarter. Ms. Pye.
I move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
There's a motion second. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to go over here. Mayor Protem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric, I love the idea of this, having to consider building an ADU myself for elderly parents. And this is, I think our residents that are looking at this are really going to appreciate this. As I understand it, this is almost an off-the-shelf thing. If they were to go with an off-the-shelf plan, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, as our streamlining, you're going to look at that and go, oh, off-the-shelf pre-approved plan according to this stamp, approve?
You're hearing that correctly, Council Gardner, is that as of right now, there are no cities that really have this, so we would be one of the first, which is great because that is exactly what would happen. They would, someone wouldn't have to design or develop, hire an architect firm. They would essentially be able to pick one that aligns with the architecture of that community, and staff would verify that the architecture is comparable to that community. And yes, exactly, it would be over the counter.
And then since our architectural styles are all over the map in this city, it's going to be a pretty broad discretionary thing. But I really do appreciate this, and I like it a lot. I'm excited. I think it'll be great for our residents. I share your concerns, and I know Mr. Betts does too, on the mandates coming from the state on this. But again, it's something we kind of have to live with on this, so I'm happy to support it.
Mr. Betts? So the intent is good, but the cost to get there is really high on this one. I don't think this comports with what the going rate is for getting somebody to draw you a set of plans for ADU units. And I got friends who are in the industry, and you're talking 2 sets of plans for 8 units for $158,000, and nobody's going to go pay that kind of money for that if they're going to do an ADU. I understand there's some residual use of this stuff, but this just seems to me to be really expensive. And I looked into why. And when I saw this come up on the city website, I sent it off to a few people, and they looked at it and says, oh my God, I'm not going to deal with that one. And I'm going to give you the example. When I had my business going, we would ship something internationally, and it would take 2, maybe 3 pieces of paper. And a guy from government called me and say, I got to send you a purchase order. So, okay, great. So they start the fax machine going. 15 pages into that fax, I push the stop button. And the guy calls me on the phone and he says, wow, that happens a lot. The fax gets interrupted. You want me to start it again? What page are you at? I said, how many more are there? He says, only about another 15 pages. I said, you're giving me a 30-page purchase order for something that takes everybody else 3 to do? I said, I don't want the business. And I think that's what's gone on here is you guys have made this bid process so complicated that the reason you haven't gotten any bids is because of that. You're going out for an architectural, you've put an architectural standard to something that, unless I'm mistaken, doesn't require an architect to go out and draw these homes. A draftsman can do this.
I can't speak on that. So unfortunately, that is incorrect. So an ADU would still need to be designed dependent on the property because of the soil types. Each location has its own independent.
But it doesn't need to be an architect as long as it meets the California Building Code and goes through plan check and meets all that. You don't need an architect's stamp on that.
So the foundation and the design, the structural design, which is really the most vital part of this, it's very critical that if awarded, it would be very beneficial financially because of those being a very expensive parts of development, the structural design, the soil foundation, the types of compaction reports that are required. So this all covers that, which for a typical resident, I think a lot of that is very convoluted. So this helps address that part.
Okay, you don't need a structural engineer for a foundation, is my understanding. You don't need a structural engineer certificate on a set of plans that are submitted for an ADU as long as it meets the California Building Code. There's certain things that do require structural engineering, but I'm not sure that's one of them. But anyhow, I'm going to vote no on this one because I think it's a totally exorbitant. I totally support the idea, but I think you've had no bids come back except the one, which should be an indication there's a problem. I think it's overly complicated. You've written this, and I'm not trying to sound harsh, and I'm tired, it's late, so I'm not being nice or mince. I'm just, I just think that this one is just overwrought. It's overdone. It's just too much. I share the goal. I think it's a great goal to go and get this something ready for somebody, but $158,000 for 3 sets of plans, I don't see it. I'll leave it at that. I'm going to vote no.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any more conversation?
Just one more question. Eric,
Sure.
so how much does a resident save in cost, roughly?
That can vary significantly, especially when it goes into like I said, the specifics of the location. Right now with timing, I mean, on average, it can vary if you're just using a draftsman for the, I guess, the architectural portion and not a license, which this is a licensed architect, and going through and maybe, I guess, finding some other standard details. So to say the least, it ranges anywhere from maybe 5 to 10,000, but it can, right now it's increasing dramatically. So I mean, this could very easily go into, 15, 20,000 per resident. And that's a very generic average.
Thank you.
In my professional career, it's costing me $34,000 for an architect to do a guard check right now. So just to put it in perspective. So I don't think this is unreasonable. Just my opinion. Please vote. Mr. Nunez, did you? It didn't come up. Would just give me your voice vote.
Aye.
Motion passes with Councilmember Batts against.
All right, we didn't pull anything from the consent calendar tonight. We are at public comments again, but the two individuals on the screen were here during the first initial public comment. I have nobody else in the audience this time, so we won't be doing that. The next city council meeting is April 5th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. If we do our presentations, it'll be noticed at 5:30. Planning Commission meets on April 12th, Public Safety Commission on April 14th, and the final council meeting of April will be on April 19th. If there's any meetings in between that, we will notice them. With that said, we are adjourned.